Um,
Recording
okay,
now. We can always
capitalism,
just edit in stuff,
socialism
but yeah.
debate is going to be really fun. I am truly excited. Not like asking it in a weird way. I feel like I've done a lot of prep work. Have you been like taking pretty good notes, Brandon?
I have. I've been taking a lot of notes,
Hmm.
at least this morning I did.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Hmm.
I'm excited.
Nice. Okay, let's go ahead and start on definitions. So I have quite a few definitions here, and if you disagree with them, we can definitely hash them out because this is a really good part to like hash out first, so that
Mhm.
later on, it's makes more sense, right?
Sure.
So, a couple of basic ones. Economics. Economics is the study of the use of scarce resources that have alternative uses. Would you agree with that?
Why do you say scarce? Because I mean,
Uh,
economics is a general term for.
mm, yeah, for sure. Well, scarce. Okay, so scarce resources, like that have the like limited resources. So, like, if I
Mhm.
wanted to build X number of houses, the building costs for that could be rather high because
Sure.
the resources are limited, right? If you wanted to build something that took air, the only real cost that you need with that is the collection of the air rather than the air itself, because air is not literally infinite, but it's very, very abundant, right?
Okay.
Okay. So you would agree with that definition of economics?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The next one is scarcity. Scarcity is the gap between the supply of limited resources and the theoretical limitless demand for those resources.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. These are or a couple that I've added today that I've asked around a couple of people and, of course, Google, and they seem to be correct, but later in a couple of definitions down, we'll get into the real nitty gritty. But the price of a product or a service is the currency required by the selling entity in order to receive the desired or needed product or service, the value of which is determined by a combination of many factors, included but not limited to supply and demand of a given market, profit margins, production costs, marketing expenses, labor costs, and many other factors. Would you agree with that? And
Yeah.
by the way, if you want me to send you these so you can like look at them rather than like having to keep track of everything I'm saying, because some of these are kind of long, I can do that if
Yeah.
you'd like.
That would be great.
Yeah, give me just a second. I'll put this in the chat. Doo-doo-doo-doo. While I'm doing that, I will move on to gross profit and revenue.
Mhm.
Uh, actually, let me. Oh, shit. Just a second, because I should have probably taken these prior. Uh,
Mm, this is good.
Man, my computer does not want to. Okay, there we go. Um,
I need some more space here.
there we go. Okay, so that is the first page of definitions. Brandon, you'll see that in the finance chat. This is the second page of definitions, and then this is the bottom of the second page and top of the first page, and that'll be all the definitions. Um,
Mm.
of course, this is not a comprehensive list. If you feel things should be added to this, we can absolutely do that. But gross profit and revenue, their definitions are close enough for this debate. The differences don't really matter. But gross profit and revenue is the amount of money received by a given entity. This number often does not include the cost of production of the thing, or like the product or service.
Mhm.
Net profit, right? Because of course this is a capitalism, socialism slash democratic socialism discussion or debate. So this is obviously an important definition, which is why I split gross profit and net profit into two different things. But net profit is the amount of money received by a given company minus all of the working expenses, which can include, but are of course not limited to taxes, payroll expenses, supply costs, insurance considerations, and of course other factors.
Mhm.
Um, I'm gonna skip down to mixed economy so we can really hash out capitalism, socialism, and democratic socialism last, because I think those are
Mhm.
the ones that we might disagree on the most, or we could. But mixed economy is a mixed economy, or I'm sorry, a mixed economy is typically a free market economy with a good degree of government guidelines and protections for workers as well as consumers. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Communism, I know this debate or this discussion doesn't really involve communism, but I felt it would be helpful to both be working under the same definition of that if it comes up. But a fully realized communist society would be one based on the writings and ideas of Karl Marx, where all resources and property are commonly owned by a society in which there are no government or class divisions. In such a society, production and distribution of goods is handled based on the goodwill and work ethic of the citizenry. You'll most commonly hear this as like, what is it? To those for like, wow, Seth, what is the saying? Uh, uh, I don't even remember what the saying is. The Karl Marx saying, where it's like to those based on their need, from those based on their ability.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
like
much.
the big idea of Karl Marx. Would you agree with that definition of communism?
Yes.
Okay. Marxism, a far left method of socioeconomic analysis that uses a historical materialist interpretation of historical events to understand class relations and social conflict. You'll see this very often as like eat the rich, right? Like that's a Marxist thing because you're identifying these class differences or these socioeconomic differences between groups of people. Anytime that I've ever seen people talking about um, like the differences between groups of people, especially in terms of power dynamics. That's as far as I have heard and seen, that's always rooted in a Marxist interpretation, which isn't necessarily bad. That's just sort of where it comes from. Would you agree
Mhm.
with that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to skip down to market failure and then greed, and then we can go back up to worker cooperative. A market failure is an economic situation defined by an inefficient distribution of goods and services in the free market, often leading to a net loss or excessive net gain of economic value. So you'll see this most commonly in terms of new fields, like new industries, that there isn't a lot of competition, right? So in
Mhm.
that situation, if there are a lot of consumers, if there's a lot of demand and not a lot of supply, right? Like even though that is a situation where capitalism applies, there is very excessive market gain because of the drastic supply and demand differences. You could also see this, especially right now with Ian in Florida, right? Hurricane Ian, people selling water for like, $10, $15, $20 per water bottle. That is a market failure, but only because the supply of water bottles is very, very low.
Mhm.
Um, would you agree with that definition of market failure?
Mhm.
Perfect. And then greed. Greed is an intense and selfish desire for something, especially wealth, power, or food. For whatever reason, Google's definition includes food, but wealth and power are the big two. Would you change that definition of greed at all?
No, I think it's accurate.
All right, perfect. Okay, now we're starting to get into the real meat of this discussion with worker cooperative. A worker co op is a system of management of a firm that is owned and self managed by the workers of that firm. This may mean a firm where every worker owner participates in decision making via a democratic process and in a democratic fashion. It can also refer to a firm in which management is elected by every worker owner who each have a single vote. Would you agree with that? This is again, like I said, this is starting to get into the real meat of it. So if you disagreed, we can absolutely hash it out.
Mm, hang on, I'm reading back over it.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
That's I agree with that. That sounds fair.
Awesome. Okay. Uh, Scooting back up to capitalism, which again, this is going to be a good one to really get straight. Uh, Capitalism is a mode of production in which the means of production are owned, controlled, and managed privately by either an individual or a collection of individuals. You might see that with like shareholders, right? And in which the means of production are employed for the express purpose of producing something that can be sold for a profit. Capitalism also centers around the individual and their freedom of choice in a free and fair market. Capitalism is based on the idea that private ownership of resources and the means of production leads to a more efficient and prosperous society. Even if you think that capitalism is like wrong in that assumption, would you agree that that is how you would define capitalism?
Yeah, that's how I would define it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then last two, socialism, which I know you made it pretty clear in our sort of pre pre debate conversations that you are not defending socialism exactly. You're defending democratic socialism. So I really want to make sure we separate these two things, right? So any disagreement you have, I want to hear it. Okay.
Okay.
Um, I have socialism defined as, broadly speaking, a political and economic system in which property and the means of production are owned in common, typically controlled and managed by the state. Socialism is based on the idea that common or public ownership of resources and the means of production leads to a more free, equal, and or equitable society. What would you change about that?
Um, I wouldn't change anything.
You know?
It's a fair definition.
Okay. Yeah, I in my talks with other people about these definitions, because with how important these definitions are, I wanted to get a lot of different viewpoints.
Sure.
It was made clear to me that socialism has a lot of different definitions, because it can also, socialism can also mean government-run programs, right? Like universal health care, free college, plenty, like a lot of Bernie Sanders' like sort of ideas, right? And again, I don't want to add any sort of moralistic labels on anything. I just want to lay out what things are. That is something that I left out of the definition, not on purpose. If you want to add social programs in, we can, but and I'd be totally fine with that. But that's sort of what I have as my working definition of economic socialism.
Gotcha.
Agree?
Yeah, I
Disagree?
follow you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, lastly, democratic socialism is a form of socialism which emphasizes that both the economy and society should be run democratically, and that the goal is to meet the needs of all the people, not just the wealthy few. Some socialists argue that socialism does not necessarily require the state to run everything. Instead, business institutions should be run by those workers and consumers that are affected by them. This could be implemented, for example, as worker run cooperatives or by publicly owned enterprises managed by workers and consumer representatives. So we saw this a lot near the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 18th century with, I can't remember his name exactly, but there were like a group of principles that they had. I would have to really look this up. I didn't actually have a source for this. Um, Democratic. Do you have a problem with that definition of democratic socialism?
No, I don't. That's
Okay.
that's a fair and accurate definition.
Okay. Um, so then I guess we can, now that we're all speaking the same language, do you want to go first with pro democratic socialism and anti capitalism? Or would you rather me go first?
Uh, I mean, it's really up to you. Um,
Okay.
what do you want
Yeah.
to do?
If why don't you start with why you think socialism or democratic socialism would be the way to
Okay.
go. By the way, if I want to set this straight, if I accidentally claim that you're defending socialism, it was a complete mistake, right? So I'm not meaning to
Right,
do that. It
right.
might just be like a brain, I'm auto correcting. But I
Okay.
want to recognize that you're not defending socialism. You're defending democratic socialism. But I may
Yeah.
slip up here and there, but I really don't mean to. So why do you think democratic socialism is like the way to go?
I believe that democratic socialism is the way to go for multiple reasons.
Hmm.
The first being that capitalism, at its core, Jonathan, when we're talking about
Hmm.
capitalism, we're talking
Hmm.
about the absolute pursuit of profit over human, environmental, and social costs. And to me, that's
Hmm.
not sustainable.
Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
and I hear all the time that there are arguments, with capitalism that states, okay, well, under a capitalistic society, we can have a lot of innovation. And on paper, that sounds good, but I don't believe that you can have innovation when profit is your driving force. To me, that doesn't
Okay.
make sense.
Hmm.
Um, Under democratic socialism, you can promote workers' unions.
Hmm.
Um, as stated in the definition of democratic socialism, we're not focusing on the rich or the CEOs or even the shareholders. We're focusing on the 99%. We're focusing on the people that are on the, for lack of a better term, ground level, um,
Hmm.
working these companies, these businesses, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
Um, Not only going into the environmental portion,
Hmm.
or my environmental issues with capitalism is when we have a capitalist society
Hmm.
and we're trying to create profit. We're using factories, we're poisoning our water supply, we're poisoning our air supply, we're constantly drilling for oil when we don't need to anymore. We've learned that we have the ability to make electric cars. Why are we
Hmm.
continuing to use gasoline engines? Because these big corporations that drill for oil, because it's privately owned under a capitalistic society or in a
Hmm.
capitalistic society, want to continue to increase their profit. And so, in the midst of that, we end up stunning our growth or stunning our progression towards renewable energy.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I wanted to give you a chance to piggyback off of that.
Okay. So a couple of things. With the capitalism, like putting profit over people thing. Um,
Hmm.
the way that my brain thinks about this, right, is okay. So one of my many issues with the capitalism places profit over people thing is that the way that I see it, it's very, very vague. Okay, very few specifics. Are we
Okay.
talking about the workers who get paid an amount that they agree to be paid whenever they agree to employment, who can, if they wish, seek out better job prospects, who can accept higher paying jobs at different firms, who also don't have to worry about the massive issues that come with running a business, right? Legal, tax, insurance liabilities, they're absolutely staggering. And the way that I think about it anyway, they would absolutely melt the mind of people who have never considered what it takes to run a proper, profitable business.
Hmm.
Are we also talking about the customers who get a product or service that they like and are willing to pay for and one that improves their lives, who have a wide array of companies clamoring to make the best possible product or provide the best possible service for the lowest
Hmm.
possible price? Or are we talking about the investors who are very widely, very often retirees that rely on this income from their 401ks and their retirement accounts to supplement their golden years? Income that comes from profitable capitalistic corporations that are very often demonized by socialists, young and old socialists, but whom these investors, if they wanted, could easily move their capital from different firms to other firms that operate more efficiently, more effectively, and have higher returns on their capital. My broad-based issue with this specific criticism is that the way that I think about it, it gets capitalism completely backwards. Capitalism doesn't put profit over people. It requires people to make a profit. It requires people consenting to do business with them. It requires people consenting to invest in them. It requires people consenting to work for them. It requires that you, as a capitalist, treat your employees better, at the very least, better than the competition, and that you give your customers a good product or a good service and a good return on capital for your investors and your shareholders. And if you abdicate any of these responsibilities enough, your company quickly finds itself in the dustbin of history. That's the way that my brain thinks about putting profits over people. What do you think about that? I don't know which people. I'd like to know which people are getting screwed over in capitalism, under capitalism.
Sure, I don't mind clarifying that for you. When we say putting profit over people,
Mhm.
we're talking about and I understand where you're coming from. I get that
Mhm.
on paper, all of that stuff sounds great. It sounds great that I can consent to how much I'm being paid. I can agree to a certain amount. That sounds good on
Mhm.
paper.
Mhm.
But when it comes to certain corporations,
Mhm.
I want to ask a counter question.
Mhm. Of course.
If I create a business
Mhm.
and let's say I'm a terrible boss, but all my
Mhm.
workers agreed to work for my business.
Mhm.
Is that okay? Is that right? Is it right to pay someone under a living wage while I'm still receiving a lot of money simply because I'm the one who started this business? When we're talking about when
Mhm.
people on my side, when we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about how it doesn't necessarily create wealth for the people that are working the business. It only creates wealth for the person who started the business. That's
Okay.
one of our fundamental issues. So,
Mhm.
yes, you may have the ability to go and start a business, but how do you start a business? You have to have money. You have to be able to, assuming it's not, I'm not talking about a corporation, I'm talking about like a standard privately owned business.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to have some sort of capital already, unless you
Mhm.
take out a loan, to start your business.
Mhm.
So,
Yes.
you're welcome to interject if you want.
No. No.
Um,
Yeah. I definitely don't want to interrupt you. I want to get the whole argument.
yeah, you have to have some sort of capital in order to start your business in the first place. Where
Mhm.
that money comes from, that's a completely different conversation. But it seems to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that
Mhm.
capitalism is more about who the first person to start the business is and kind of use everybody else as labor to then deepen their own pockets, as opposed to a democratically socialist economy where we all, right, have an equal opportunity. Not saying we don't have an equal opportunity under capitalism,
Mhm.
but where we all have an opportunity to create our own wealth because we don't have to
Mhm.
worry about things like having insurance because healthcare would be free, or paying for student loans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
I know there's a lot of discrepancies there, but I
No.
can
No.
elaborate.
So, a couple of things. Um, the starting capital for a business can come from plenty different places. I don't know if you did it on purpose, but you sort of brushed over getting a small business loan, right? Now, I don't
Mhm.
have any personal experience with getting a small business loan, but I do know that the credit checks for a small business loan, they are run on you as an individual if you go for a business loan, but they're also very heavily based on what your idea for a business is. So if you go
Mhm.
to a bank and you say, "Hey, I have this really cool idea. We're going to make hammers, but the head of the hammer is actually just made of styrofoam," right? It's not going to be like unless it's like a kid's toy, the bank is probably not going to invest in it, right? But if you go to them and you say, "Hey, I found this really new, like innovative way to make metal, but I need $50,000 to really get the idea off the ground." And the metal is going to be in the head of the hammer. And in fact, we're not going to use wood for the shaft of the hammer. We're going to use this particular metal. So it's a really innovative, brilliant. Here's my working design. I already have everything laid out. I just need the starting capital. Banks, because of greed, by the way, are willing to invest in a business that they think is profitable because the bank wants to make money. And if they can loan you money and then they don't have to touch it at all, they just make sure that your business is still profitable, the bank makes money and you make money, and eventually you pay off that loan, because at that point it's not technically a bond, but it's kind of like a bond in that the bank doesn't have any ownership over your business. You still own the whole thing, but you're generating capital for your initial investor, and once they're paid off, then you have a business that's already started and generating money. Now, I totally get it from a perspective of somebody that is. This is going to sound like I'm talking down, and I'm absolutely not. From the perspective of somebody that because I haven't looked into starting a business either, just so we're on the same page. From somebody's perspective that is like new to that world, it can seem incredibly daunting, and it is. But people do it all the time, right? And there are plenty of people out there that also make money on helping people start businesses, right? Like lawyers, accountants, tax professionals. There are plenty of people where their entire job is helping you, sometimes for free, right? If it's just if the consultation is free, um, going to them and requesting like, "Hey, I need help. I don't know how to start a business. I need help starting a business," right? And they get paid to do that. Um, I forget exactly what you said after that. Oh, you said with the if you were a horrible boss, right? But all your employees consented to work for you. I just want to
Mhm.
clarify, in that situation, are you the owner or are you just like a middle manager?
The owner.
Okay. So then yeah, I would say if the employees are happy with that arrangement, right? If they're looking for a job and they can't find one, then I guess that might be a different conversation. I know this is kind of a classist thing to say, but if you in your town can't find another job, move. Like move somewhere, figure something out to get out of that sort of
Okay.
situation. But the reason that people get paid what they paid is the reason that people get paid what they get paid is because that's what your boss thinks that you're worth. If you think that you're worth more, go to them and ask for a raise. If they don't give you the raise, go to a different firm. If you truly think that you're worth 10, 15% more than, or more than that, hell, more than what you're getting paid right now, go to a different firm because people, especially right now, goodness gracious, people are clamoring to have good employees, right? Now, that being said, if you think you're worth more and you're truly not worth more per hour in a capitalist economy, then what do you have to do? You have to become worth more. Your time is valuable, right? So if you're like working at like McDonald's or something, and you're like, screw this, I don't want to get paid 7.25 or $8 an hour or whatever to flip
Mhm.
burgers. Learn a skill, learn a trade, or start your own business. Like it's difficult, but people do it all the time. Um, I know it gets a little awkward to do it, but go around to your family, ask for money from them, ask for small loans. That being said, if nobody around you has any capital and there's no like I'm not sure what to tell you at that point. The internet is an amazing thing, and if you have electricity and you have access to the internet, you can figure out how to make money online. Now, I'm not arguing for like hustle culture, right? But if you're at the bottom of the barrel, you got to do what you got to do to survive. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I do. I just, as a counterpoint, I
mhm,
believe that it's less. If we, Jonathan, if we were in a economy where there wasn't insane inflation, then
uh-huh,
I would be 100% on board with you. You know what I'm saying? If you have to make yourself worth something, but
uh-huh,
in this era, in this economy, it's more on these corporations to pay their workers an amount that matches how much things are on average. It's
mhm,
insane that somebody should still be being paid. If somebody is still being paid 7.25 an hour,
mhm,
right, to flip burgers, as you said,
mhm,
that's insane when they're living in New York City or they're living in Atlanta.
mhm,
Not saying that they get paid that much out there, just hypothetically, right?
mhm,
7.25, 8.25, 9.25, still not enough.
mhm,
Um, And I also noticed that you just kind of brushed over the workers when we were talking about, or when you were going on about the getting the loan from the bank to start your own business. Yes, you may get a loan from, like and when you were talking about making metal or hammers, whatever you were mentioning.
yeah, just any
Um,
any new business idea that
just
might get the bank's
right,
attention.
right, just any kind of new business idea, right? You you brushed over the workers, and
Mhm,
it struck a chord with me because I'm like,
mhm,
well, yes, you might be getting a loan from the bank, and you may, be able to start your own business. And I get that it's not easy. It's not. My dad,
mhm,
he struggled. He did his thing,
mhm,
but at the same time, you could start your own business and still be like, well, I'm going to pay my workers the minimum amount that I can pay them because, well, I don't really have enough to pay them a reasonable amount.
mhm,
At that point, people can't just say, "Oh, well, I'm not gonna work here." They can't just say, "Oh, well, I'm gonna go move somewhere else." They can't do that. What happens if they don't have a car? Our cities are not necessarily designed to where people
Mhm.
can walk, around and find a new place. Everything is designed around cars. What happens if they don't have a car?
That's
Or
it.
public
Mhm.
transportation isn't.
Mhm.
It's less about find a job and work there and then to work your way up, and more
Mhm.
about how they're actually going to achieve all of those things.
Mhm.
If that
Okay.
makes sense.
No, yeah, absolutely. If you live in a city like New York, right? You should hopefully be able to find a job if you don't have a car. You should hopefully be able to
Sure.
find a job that is near you. Now, let me be clear. I have never lived in like a major metropolitan area, so I don't have a whole lot of experience with that, right? My whole life has been centered around living basically in the suburbs or in the country where you have to drive, great distances to go where you need to go, right? Um, the reason that I kind of brushed over the workers, right, is where you set your wage is how you value that labor as the business owner, right? So if you're like, hey, I have a position where we're making chairs, let's just saying chairs. And I know that on average, a worker should be able to pump out 5 chairs or 10 chairs. Let's make the math. Well, no, it would be 6 chairs. 6 chairs every hour, right? So let's say I want to sell the chairs for $15. And I should probably write this down, right? But the way that you calculate how much they're going to get paid is based on what they produce, right? Now, if a worker produces more and they come to you with a request for a raise, 100%, you should probably give them a wage, and if or a wage, raise, having a stroke, a raise, right? Because if you don't give them a raise, they could go to your competition and get paid more, and now you're out a really good worker, right? Now, again, it goes back to the idea of if employees want to work for your business, you have to pay them a desirable wage. That's again goes back to the sort of profits over people idea. People aren't going to work for you if you don't pay them enough. If you don't pay them what their time is truly worth in terms of labor value, right? And capitalism can get super cold sometimes. But if you have an employee who for months is not functioning, I don't know why somebody should be forced to hire them on as like labor.
What do you mean by that? What do you
If
mean by isn't functioning?
uh, not doing their job, let's say, like not showing up to work, or whenever they are showing up to work, they're slacking off.
Hmm.
Just
Okay.
not being like a it's not being like a good employee, right?
Okay. Yeah, and I agree. Those people should not be entitled to somebody who's paying them. At least, in that situation.
Hmm.
But I mean, I wanted to go back to what you said earlier when you said that people were scrambling for workers. The reason for that is because, and I'm sure you know this,
Hmm.
they're not being paid enough. I mean,
Hmm.
even literally just as a personal anecdote, I went to Wendy's yesterday because I was really hungry, and
Hmm.
they were closed at like 5:30 because they didn't
Hmm.
have enough people to work it. And I'm just like, wow, okay, maybe they're not
Well,
paying their workers enough.
is
And
that
that's
because
one of the. Go ahead.
is that because people aren't paying their workers enough, or is that because the labor pool right now is relatively small?
Well,
What do you
why would
think
the
that's?
labor pool be small?
Well, it could be because a bunch of people died recently. That could be what it was. But it could also be the massive amounts of money that were put into the hands of Americans, which I'm not arguing against. I'm just saying that that is what happened via unemployment or stimulus checks. And they said, hey, I don't really need to work right now. I live at home with my parents. There's no real reason to get out. I don't want to get sick. There's plenty of different reasons. It could
Are
also just
you
be the idea that employees are quitting and then waiting weeks or months to acquire another job because they just are living off of other savings, and so they don't want to work at the moment. But that being said, I don't want to skip around the point that if a company or if a corporation pays their workers enough, they will come back, right? I don't want to skip around that. But also
sure?
there's the other side of that coin, which is profit margins are such uh, so that certain businesses run on razor thin margins, right? Not all businesses are like, I don't know, I can't even tell you a company that has off the top of my head that has massive profit margins. But a lot of the times, corporations, especially small businesses, run on razor thin profit margins, right? And the competition, the way that it is, you start paying your employees more your employees are going to be great. Like they're going to be happy, right? But your corporation or your small business might only be around for 6 more months, and then nobody has a job, right? That small business that employed, let's say 15, 20 people, now it's gone because we increased everybody's pay rate 10%. Everybody was super happy, but the company ran out of money because people stopped. Our prices were too high, so people stopped hiring us.
So, okay,
There's always that back and forth.
but exactly, but I'm glad you said that because that takes me to my main point.
Uh-huh.
The question is, would you rather, as a business owner, if you were a business owner, would you rather, if the choice was in our current economy, if the choice was to continue to pay your workers 7.25 an hour, or raise their wages
Mhm.
to 11, 12, 13, $14 an hour at the expense of your business being there less or at least a less amount of time
Mhm.
potentially. It's not guaranteed, it's potential. Would you rather raise their wages so that they would be happy and be able to live in this economy, or would you rather keep their wages to where they can't live so that you can keep your business around longer?
Mhm. I would rather people be paid slightly less and be able to have a job for longer. That's what I would prefer.
But if they can't
Because
live off of the money they're being paid, what's even the point?
okay, so then what's better, right? If you're paid 7.25 right now, what's better? Starting to get paid $10 an hour and then you only have that job for 6 months and now you have no job, right? And all of your coworkers have to be laid off as well, or you make 7.25 uh you have to struggle for a while, and I believe me, my bank account has been in the negative more times than I like to count, right? Overdraft fees are a bitch. I get it. Uh or you have 7.25, it's a struggle, and you get to build your skills up in your off time, and then you get paid, or shit, just experience at your job, right? Becoming a manager, or even very, very much down the line, like a general manager or an operator at a business, right?
Mhm.
I think I forget exactly what the statistic is, but like it's quite a lot of Chick-fil-A franchisees that started at Chick-fil-A as like a chef or like a fry cook or one of the front end workers, right? It's a good amount because Chick-fil-A loves giving money, starting capital to franchisees that know how the business runs.
And I don't disagree with that. It's just that if I want to take a step away from the corporations just for right now. I am going to get back to that, but I really want to focus on the smaller businesses. And the reason that I say I want to focus on the smaller businesses is because 85 to 90% of the time, small businesses are going to hire high school students, college students.
Mhm.
Focusing
Yeah,
more
for sure.
specifically on the college students who are going to have college debt, who are going to be trying to pay off tuition. If they're getting paid $9 an hour,
Mhm.
they're really not going to be able to use their paycheck for anything other than college, right?
As in like
So,
paying off loans or like
as
just
if
living on campus or something.
both, both. Um,
Okay. So
they're
so
really not going to be able to do anything.
my
So, and I get that's not really the job of the owner of the business. That's not what I'm saying.
yeah.
But it's you're not going to hire more times than not. You're not going to hire an adult to work, at a little small business unless that person already knows the person or whatever the case may be. But you're mainly going to hire younger people. Is what I'm saying. Um, and I mean, you're hiring younger people. You're paying them something that you're paying them a minute amount, right? You're still being paid because you're the owner of the company, right? I don't think that's no, I don't think that's right. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, real quick.
I
I
think that's
think
right.
I'd like to ask this because it might get at the heart. And by the way, if you want, I can address the college thing. I wrote it down in my notes just to like make sure that I hit. Hold on.
I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, what's up?
No, you're sorry. Go ahead. Thinking
Oh,
out loud.
uh, okay, real quick. What do you think, especially for a small business? Um, what do you think is the profit margin for a small business in terms of a percentage?
I can tell you.
Okay. Um, But let's say you have a small business that's making $1 million a year in revenue, right?
Okay.
How much do you think? Let's assume the business has one owner, right? Small business, $1 million a year in revenue, right? Gross profit. How
Mhm.
much do you think that owner of the business is making on his K1, which is the ownership tax form, right? How much money do you think falls into his or her pockets, at the end of the year?
Definitely not much.
Can I ask a clarifying question? How many employees?
Uh,
That's an important part. That's an important
No, it's a
factor.
very important part. Let's say 20. It's a super off the top of my head. The
Okay,
numbers
yeah.
might be wrong, but let's say 20 employees.
21 people,
Mhm.
$1 million profit margin, right? I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I would say
Um,
less than 100,000.
mhm. Okay, for sure. Yeah, correct. I would definitely. Um, Again, depending on exactly what the financials are of that company, it could be anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000 a year. Okay, it's incredibly low relative to what you might expect, right? What is the? Let me quick look up median income America. Uh, So Google says that the median income in America, if the page would load, is $31,000 a year.
31,000.
Okay,
Okay.
so this business owner is making above median income, which is good, right? But it's still not like, what is it, Daffy Donald Duck, whichever one has, or Scrooge
Donald
McDuck
Duck.
rather, Scrooge McDuck. It's not that sort of situation, right? He's not
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos, just like swimming around in the pool of money.
Yeah, sure.
There are a lot of costs that go into running the business. This is another
Sure.
thing that people might not consider in terms of liabilities with business ownership, right? There are plenty of instances in which an employee of especially small business, which I'm glad we're doing that now. There are plenty of instances in which an employee or a manager at a small business might actually make more in a given year than the owner of that company, right? And the reason for that is because the way that corporate law works is if your business checking account is too low to pay so if you could only either pay your employer or your employees or yourself as the business owner, legally you have to pay all of your payroll expenses first, and then you make what you make at the end of the month on your
Yeah,
uh
you get what's left over.
yeah, you give yourself, I forget what it's called, but it's it's what's left over, right? And guess what
The
happens?
dividends.
Yeah, basically, right? Guess what happens if what's left over at the end of the month is a negative number? No money, right? So
Mhm.
if employers could pay their employees more than that, more than what they're being paid now, I guarantee you that there is not an employer on earth who wouldn't, or a small business owner especially, right? Because typically with small business owners, you've known your employees for like a long time. You're close with them. You work right there. It's not like you're sitting in your ivory tower or on like a yacht.
Yeah,
You're in the
sure.
trenches with them all the time, right? Um, so it's very rare that you'll find like a ruthless small business owner. That's not like really, it's kind of almost an oxymoron. These people really, really care about their employees, and
Mhm.
especially when they're thinking about firing them, right? I've heard of small business owners that literally take like 9 months, where at the beginning they're like, yeah, I need to fire this guy. And they only do it 9 months later because they're so stricken with grief about letting this person go, because that's going to really mess up their life, right? And I could keep you know, keep talking on this, but that's the basic idea, right? These small business owners are not just absolutely rolling in the dough. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stress that goes along with owning a business that employees don't have to deal with at all, right? So every 2 weeks, an employee gets a paycheck, and an employer, a business owner, could go literally months without seeing a profit number. But the employees don't have to worry about that. They don't have to worry about any of it. All they have to worry about is showing up, clocking in, and clocking out, right? And hopefully doing a good job in the middle. But even
Right,
sometimes that's not even a prerequisite.
and I agree with that. It's bad that there are some, business owners that won't get paid, for months on end, and I think that's awful. But at the same time, you choose to start a business. The whole point of starting
Yes.
a business is to make something that is a hobby or could be a hobby, such as, I don't know, making fucking t-shirts, right? If you were
It
to make a
doesn't it
business
doesn't
off of
have to be a
t-shirts,
hobby. It could be a job. It could be like you
yeah,
want
I
to start
mean,
a legit company.
and it could. I mean, it could be anything. It could be literally anything. But you, at the end of the day, you still choose to start a business. If I'm
Mhm.
gonna go work somewhere, I'm not working somewhere because I want to work there, unless, sometimes people do that. But majority of the time, most people aren't working there because they want to be there. They're working there because they need capital. That's one of the problems with capitalism
Mhm.
is everything is about survival. Nobody is really living.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Nobody's really living.
I would argue almost exactly what you argued, but in the reverse. If you don't want to be a business owner, if you would prefer the simpler life of an employee, that's totally fine. But
Sure.
you have to agree to some wage that your employer will also agree, right? So if your time is literally only worth $9 an hour and you go to a pizza shop or wherever and you're like, "Hey, I want to get paid $11 an hour." And they're like, "What? No, this is just not it's not workable in terms of the finances of the business." And you're like, "Oh, well, screw this. I'm gonna go to the person across the street." And you're just never gonna get hired if your skills aren't worth what you think that they're worth. So this is like one of the big disconnects, right, between employees and employers is like the pay thing, which is fair because employers are spending the business's money, paying you to get a good amount of work and product out of you. And you could do, and Seth, I saw you kind of laughed at this, but good work ethic is not necessarily a prerequisite to getting a paycheck because of something that's a new phenomenon, not really new, but we have a label for it now called quiet quitting, right? Have you
Mhm.
heard about this, Brandon? I'm sure, right? It's starting to be a very popular phenomenon, especially in corporate America, right? Quiet quitting. You get to go to work, make money, leave. You don't have to do shit until they catch you, right? You have to do the bare minimum, and it's like, this is how you get one over on your employers, and it's like, okay, good luck. You're going to get fired real quick, and if you don't,
Well, I mean,
the
I
next
just
time there are
call it
layoffs, you're like the first to go
I just
because
call
and
it like
I
people
and
just
I
keep
keep track
cashing
of
the
these
check.
numbers, right?
and I understand that.
Sorry for
I
your
understand that.
interruption.
But I mean, there's a reason for quiet quitting, Jonathan. Let me ask you:
Oh,
when you wake up in the morning, I assume you work every day. I'm assuming you work 40 plus hours a week. Am I wrong?
no,
No, I'm still leaving on
I
Discord
would
actually. Yeah.
not to toot my own horn. I would probably say I'm a harder worker than average. Um, but to yes, I'll tentatively agree.
But for the sake of conversation, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If your boss emailed you right now and said, you know what, Jonathan, I'm actually gonna need you to like come into work pro bono for the next like 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pay you to work for the next six
Uh-huh.
months. But if you stay with me, you'll resume your standard salary amount after 6 months.
Mhm.
Would you really go in every day and work is harder than the average person if you knew you weren't gonna get paid?
If I knew I wasn't gonna get paid, I wouldn't work at all
Mhm.
because
That's what I'm
I
saying.
cannot. I have to eat, right? But I
Exactly.
don't understand what this is getting at.
Well, what I'm getting at is that's the reason that people are doing this so-called quiet quitting. If they're not making an amount to feed themselves or take care of themselves, why would they go and work super hard? Why would they be out here
Mm,
working doubles? Why would they be out
Uh-huh.
here doing all this stuff? You know?
Okay, so why are we equating literally working for nothing for literally zero? Which if somebody forced you to work for nothing, that's slavery. And we don't have
But it
slavery
happened
in the U.S. outside of the prison system, right?
true.
So if you're getting paid, let's say hypothetically, if you're getting paid 3/4 of what you think that you're worth, uh, that's not slavery, right?
Right.
It's different. It's a different thing.
Because you're still getting something. But what I'm asking
Yeah, you're getting
the
paid, and you're getting paid for nothing as well. So I just don't I don't
well
understand how these 2 ideas
Well,
coalesce.
what I'm saying is, the reason asked if you, I mean, the reason I said you wouldn't get paid for 6 months is because this happens all the time. If there's a government shutdown, our government employees aren't getting paid anything. And I'm not talking about Congress and the Senate. I'm talking about our federal government employees, which my grandparents are, or not federal prison employees, which my grandparents are male people, et cetera, et cetera. Those people aren't getting paid if there is a government shutdown. And so what I'm asking is, you personally, if you have to get up and go to work, I mean, and let's change it. Let's say you got paid. Let's say your boss can only pay to afford to pay you minimum wage. Would you still get up and go to work and work harder than the average person?
Me specifically?
You personally, yeah.
No, because my time is worth significantly more than minimum wage.
So how does that make you any different from somebody who, and I'm not saying that, your job is the same thing as somebody who's flipping burgers,
Mhm.
but it's not, to me, and to the people who are quiet quitting, it's not necessarily about their skill, right? Because I know that it doesn't take anything to flip a burger. I know that. I can do that in my kitchen right now for free. But the problem is people have to be able to eat. So even if they're not doing this crazy elaborate amount of work to get paid a really good amount, they still have to eat at the end of the day,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, but quiet quitters are doing most of the time no work and a lot of the time minimum work, right?
Because why
So
would they?
what
Why would they?
well, because at that point you're stealing. You're effectively stealing from the company.
True, you are. I don't disagree with that. It's just that if you're not, I mean, like I said, if you're not going to get paid a reasonable amount to eat anyway, why would you go and work? Is all I'm asking.
Okay, so if
I
an
don't see.
employer isn't going to get a legitimate amount of product or production or service out of you,
Mhm.
why would they pay you?
True. I mean, they don't have to. They don't have to pay you.
Yeah, you're okay. Okay,
They
wait,
don't. They
hold
really
on.
don't.
Wait,
I
are
mean,
you
I mean, I get it. I get that if you're not going to work, you shouldn't be paid. But the thing is, at the same time, there's a reason why those people are not doing that. They're not just not doing it because fuck this job. Like it's because, oh, I'm not making enough money.
that's kind of why they're doing it.
But why are they saying fuck this job? Because they're not getting any money really. They're getting minimum wage. They're getting $10 an hour when they need 15, 25 really is what we need. But they're not getting paid a reasonable amount. So why
Okay,
would I go in and put on all this work?
so as far as I can tell, quiet quitters, and by the way, I would like to get off the quiet quitters thing because it really doesn't apply to the capitalism,
Sure.
democratic socialism thing. But really quick with the quiet quitters, as far as I've seen, more often than not, quiet quitters are corporate people, right? They're people that work in offices.
Mm-hmm.
These people are not making minimum wage, right? From
They're
my
not.
experience working at Chick-fil-A, you can't be a quiet quitter at Chick-fil-A. It's just not going to work, right? Your manager, your supervisor will see you just not doing anything, not cleaning or during a rush, not making sandwiches, and you'll get fired, right? These people are making significantly more than minimum wage on average, I would imagine. These people are not like destitute, right? Now, if
Mm-hmm.
their budgets are off, right, I guess each particular case can be different. But if these people are making like 80, 85, $90,000 a year in like a law office or a corporate office, and they're just like, I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to sit back and drink a cerveza or something. Like these people are not living like in the projects. Like that's not what's going on. So I don't have any sympathy for quiet quitters whatsoever. I get it. I get it. Like I would love to go to my job and not have to do anything and get paid like a pretty good amount. But these people
Well,
are
I
not
mean,
making these people are not making 7.25 an hour and quiet quitting. Those people don't exist.
well, that's not. I mean, but that's also really not what quiet quitting even is. Quiet quitting is not just standing around expecting people to get paid. Quiet quitting is working strictly within the amount of time that you're being paid. So if I work 8 to 5, I'm working 8 to 5. I'm not doing overtime. I'm not coming in an hour and a half early. It's working specifically the hours that you're designed to work or that you're
Okay,
being paid to work.
hold
Because
on.
there are a lot of people. Go ahead.
Mhm. I didn't realize that I didn't foresee we would have to get into like what is quiet quitting. Quiet quitting
Yeah.
is not saying, "Hey, I work a 9 to 5, so hey, I'm going to work 9 to 5, but I'm not going to work anymore." That's not like quiet quitting. Quiet quitting is going to work in the allotted hours that you're scheduled to work, but either not doing anything at all, not doing any productive work, or doing the bare minimum to not get caught. That's what
Okay.
quiet quitting is. And I can source this as well if you'd like. I just didn't foresee we
And
would.
I understand that. I understand that. I'm
Okay.
just when you say bare minimum, let's take Chick-fil-A for example. I've never worked at Chick-fil-A, so you might know more about this than me. But from what I'm understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
If I were to work at Chick-fil-A and I were to quiet quit, right? That would be me making my sandwiches, giving them to the people, right? It wouldn't be any what is it that they say? what is it that Chick-fil-A workers say when
My pleasure.
my pleasure. I wouldn't be saying any of that, right? I would just be doing the bare minimum from my 4 to 10 p.m. shift, right? That'll be it. That's what that is. It's not necessarily standing around and doing nothing. It's just not putting in more effort than what's required. And I get that. Yeah, you said in the corporate world, it's a whole thing. I'm just using Chick-fil-A for the
No,
sake of conversation.
mhm. Okay, so quiet quitting is okay. Seth, what's up?
So, from my personal experience, I used to work at a pizza buffet. Like, what quiet quitting could be like considered be like is if your shift ended around like 8 or 9 p.m., then your shift isn't over until you're basically done with all your work. So like
Yeah, it's a close one.
I've had to work multiple times like till like 2 or 3 a.m. because that would just be what was expected of me, even though that's
Yep.
not strictly what I agreed to do. I agreed to work until like 9 p.m., right?
One
So
really quick,
you could
anecdote.
argue that would be quiet quitting for me to just leave when my shift is over. Even like or like they would think or they would see it that way, even if I am just doing what I agreed to do. So like quiet quitting does mean different things in different like in like depending on what job you're even working at.
Sure, but if let's say I quiet quit at Chick-fil-A, right? And my shift ends technically at 10 o'clock on a Saturday because that's when the store, or 11 o'clock, right? The company gives an hour to clean up. I remember very specifically because at one point half my kitchen staff walked out. We had 6 people. We were left with 3. That was a Saturday. We were there till 2:15, I think, 2:15 in the morning on Sunday morning. Left cleaning everything up. If I said, "Hey, I'm a quiet quitter, so my shift ends at 11 o'clock. I'm gonna get out of here." Um, Not doing that is like part of my job, right? My job is to
Mm.
clean up the store. So I don't. My definition of quiet quitting doesn't even fit in that because my job requirements are to clean that up. And even Brandon, with your my pleasure thing, you have a job requirement to present yourself in a particular way at Chick-fil-A, especially if you work in the front of house. And one of those requirements, I believe it's probably literally in the handbook if I checked, one of the requirements is saying things like my pleasure. So if you want to not do that, fine, but your employer is probably going to notice and is probably going to rectify that situation in some way.
Yeah,
You know,
and I don't. I mean, they would. I don't disagree with that.
okay.
But anyway, sorry. Moving on.
Yeah. So okay, let's get back onto the socialism thing. Um, oh yeah, we mentioned the college student thing. Hold on, I want to touch on this really quick because it was important.
Okay.
Uh, shit. Okay, the government thing, really quick. The government thing, you made it a point to say, hey, government employees, when there's a shutdown, which there isn't a shutdown often, but when it happens, it's not great. But that only affects government employees, right? So if those people quiet quit during a shutdown, I would understand it way more. It still wouldn't be great. But also, whenever the pay starts, all of that all of that back pay is paid to you, right? It's not like you're going to work for free. The government is accruing a debt to you, and
Right.
once the paychecks start flowing again, all of that gets paid back, right? And I remember during the last government shutdown, or it might have been the one before that. It was the one under Trump, um, or one of the ones under Trump. Um, Government employees were going up to their like landlords and stuff like that, and being like, "Hey, I work for the government. I can't pay rent right now, but I can pay rent later, and I can pay, even if you want me to, I'll pay like 5% on top, right? As like a thank you for like waiting, right? And you can talk to banks if you have proof of income. People and companies are, or yeah, corporations, super forgiving if you work for the government and your pay is blocked. That was everything that I was reading for a government shutdown. So I just
I
wanted
yeah,
to
and
say that.
no, you're right on the money. I understand that there's back pay. I do. And I do remember reading that there are some banks that are forgiving, and there are some banks that will, or some landlords that will allow you to stay, but some of them won't. That's just the reality of capitalism. If they're not making their money, there's no reason for you to stay there. But at the same time, you might be getting back pay. Like for example, if you if your pay was cut in May, what May is month 5, and you weren't going to get paid again until December, you still have to eat. So yeah, you might get back pay in January, but you still have to eat. You have to figure something else out, and it's not like you have time to figure it out. You have to figure it out on the fly.
Well, hopefully you'd have a savings account. You'd have a
I
savings
mean,
account.
yeah. I mean, if you're a government employee, yeah, you'll have a savings account, sure. But what if you don't?
Yeah,
What
then
if
you
what
need
if
to
you
get
what
better,
if
you
you
need to
had
get
a
better at personal finance. That's what that means.
well, what I'm
So
asking is, what if you had a big medical procedure where you had to dig into your finances to pay for that?
people need to have
You're
health
just out of
insurance.
luck.
I don't know.
You're just out
No,
of
you need
luck.
to have health insurance. If you're working for the government, you probably have government-sponsored health insurance.
Sure.
That's why we have benefits and stuff,
And
so that employers pay their health insurance. At the moment, I don't have health insurance, so yeah, you're right. I'd be shit out of luck, but that's also a risk that people have to be willing to take, right? And by the way, just so we're clear, this is something that I've wanted to say to a couple of your points, and I haven't yet. A lot of these problems that you're bringing up are still like problems under a socialist or democratic socialist society. None of these problems are alleviated whole cloth because it's like, we are in the democratic socialist utopia. All of these problems don't exist. All of these problems still exist, right?
sure they do. I mean, but which problem specifically are you talking about?
I would have to go back and look, but
Because
like
I
any
do
of them.
remember that
No,
I do remember that I mentioned college students having, to pay their college tuition. That wouldn't
true.
be a problem under a socialist economy or a democratic socialist economy
Is
because
it
of
is
free
it because
college.
college okay. So we have community colleges, we also have scholarships and grants. The only thing is most college isn't paid for, via a grant by the government, right? Now you can get loans from the government, but
Mhm.
these things cost money, right?
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I mean, in a way, yeah, it's not free. It's coming out of I wouldn't call it free under a democratic socialist economy. Let me fix that for you. I wouldn't call it free. I would call it using our taxes effectively. That's what I would call it. Because regardless, you're going to have to pay taxes. That's the only way for the government to make money. That's just a fact. Um,
Mhm.
but the taxes should be going towards things like everybody having the opportunity to have health care, regardless of class, regardless of race, regardless just of anything. And everybody having an opportunity to go to college, regardless of class, right? That to me is using our taxes effectively to better our economy and to spike up the happiness level. I think that happiness, the level or the overall happiness of people in a country is very important. Happiness
Mhm.
index is what I like to call it. It's really
Sure.
important. And right now in the United States, ours is incredibly low because, like I said earlier, everybody's in survival mode. Nobody is really living. Nobody.
Well,
Nobody
yes, for
except the
sure right now.
1 to
Yeah.
2% are really living. And
Uh,
and that's not sustainable.
what is the happiness index of Cuba and Venezuela? What are the happiness indexes of those places? Because
That's really what I just said.
they're eating like dogs in the streets, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean, yeah, and I
do
don't
we
disagree
have
with that.
do we have any do we have any effective examples of like a socialist or a democratic socialist society that you champion?
I would say no, and I can give you a couple reasons for that.
Okay.
Um, let's start with CIA-backed coups in Venezuela and in Cuba, really.
Cuba's
Let's
really
start.
close,
Let's
honestly.
start there. Those. I want to ask you a question. If I am a big CEO of a corporation and I have millions upon billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, right, under my belt. And I see or I hear on the news, hey, Mexico or Venezuela is hiring or not, but electing a socialist president, democratic socialist president, right? If I want to keep my interest overseas as a CEO, if I want to keep my interest overseas from being thwarted by socialism, what am I going to do? I'm gonna
I,
figure out how to topple that government because I want to
well,
keep my money flowing. That's what I want to do.
hold on. I would have a number of questions.
Go
How
ahead.
does the mere fact of Venezuela electing a socialist president, how does that affect your business interests in America?
Because people in America have media, people in America have cell phones, we have computers, we have the internet, and we can see, oh well, socialism is working for those people. Why don't we implement that over here? We that's the way we operate as human beings. We see other people have something. We see that they're getting, and I'm not saying it would be a utopia. I'm not saying that under a democratic socialist economy it would be a utopia. I'm not saying it will be perfect, but we would see, oh, they have free college, oh, they have free healthcare. We did it already with Norway. Oh, these people are going to jail and they're not coming out worse than when they went in. That sounds great. Why don't we implement that over here? Oh, that's right, because we have capitalism. We have private prisons that are for profit, paying people pennies to build all kinds of crazy shit. Right? It's not sustainable. It's not. Never has been, never will be.
Mhm.
At least for anybody who's not rich.
Okay, so real quick, unfortunately I don't know why I didn't do this. I didn't look into the Venezuela, any of the coups of Venezuela, but from what I'm seeing right now, all of them have failed. They were all CIA-backed revolutions, coup attempts, and they all
Yeah.
failed. Hugo Chavez was still in power. Nicolas Maduro still in power. All of these people still in power despite what the CIA tried to do. The other question I would ask, what is the evidence that the millionaires, let's say, or billionaires, directed these coups to happen?
Who else would do it? Let me ask you, like, who else would do that?
The government,
And
the
I'm
with
not.
government interests. I
Well,
don't.
right, but
But it's
most of
not.
the
But
people who,
it's not necessarily an economic interest. It's, hey, we don't think dictators should be in power, so we're going to try to topple them.
but that's not the job of the United States federal government. The United
I
States federal government
I
is not the
completely
bully.
agree. I completely agree. But we have to acknowledge that it wasn't purely for a socialist economic reason. It was
And
because Hugo
I'm sure it
Chavez
isn't.
and Nicolas Maduro are dictators.
And I agree with you. I do. But I want to ask you a counter question. Or I don't
Please.
want to ask a counter question. I want to make a counter statement. I'm
No,
sorry.
yeah.
Um, would you, well, I guess it is a question. Would you disagree that the majority of our politicians are paid for by big corporations?
You'd have to flesh that out more. What do you mean?
Corporations who give donations to senators, to congresspeople. You know how this whole thing works. You know how
Well,
this works,
hold
Jonathan.
on. I do know, which is why I'm asking you to flesh it out. Do you mean their
Right.
campaigns, right?
They give money towards their campaigns. And in
Okay.
exchange for helping get those people elected, those people pass policies which would help these corporations. That's why people say that politicians don't really run the country,
Mhm.
corporations do.
For sure. Who in the CIA has been elected by companies like Chevron or what other
CIA.
energy company? Who in the CIA is elected in the, by energy companies or by like millionaires or billionaires?
Well, I mean, that's
Good
not what I'm saying. I'm
question.
saying that the director of the CIA could be taking money from these big corporations. Now, I'm getting into
Wait,
conspiracy theories on, and I don't mean to do that.
I was
I'm
about
just
to
saying
say.
hypothetically. I'm saying hypothetically, right? Hypothetically, that
Okay,
could be the case.
CIA.
okay. Hypothetically, socialism works. I don't want to work in like fantasy land, right? I think it would
Right, and I'm
actually
right.
be. I would put money on the fact that it's illegal for the director of the CIA to take direct donation or direct, not even donations. It would be direct payments
And I
by
and I
companies.
agree, and I agree, I do. But I mean, what? Let me ask you a question, Jonathan.
Sure.
Why else? I mean, and it's like I said, this whole CIA coup situation, it may have failed, but it's not like it's a conspiracy
Well,
theory. It's
it
not
failed
hidden
twice.
knowledge.
There was a coup in 2002 and 2020, and they both
Yeah, I'm
failed.
saying that too. I'm saying that
Okay.
too.
Okay.
Um, but it's not like it's hidden knowledge, right? It's
What? Wait. I'm sorry. What isn't hidden knowledge?
these coup attempts. They're not hidden knowledge, even though they failed.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not hidden knowledge, right?
For sure.
And yeah, that's all I want to say about that.
Okay. Okay.
But go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to ask if there was, if you wanted to get on sort of more what your, um, excuse me, um, more along the lines of how how the economic system that you're proposing would function. You mind if I ask you a couple of questions? We can get into the sort of um,
Sure.
anti-socialism aspect. And by the way, I'm more than happy to answer any questions about capitalism that you have.
Yeah, go
Um,
for it.
Okay. What are some of your important tenets of democratic socialism?
Tenants, as in what exactly? Like
Like,
aspects,
Beliefs.
sure, or like
characteristics.
Like
principles. Yeah,
beliefs.
Yeah.
I believe.
What you
Um,
would say that entails?
it's the same kind of rhetoric of the Bernie Sanders and the AOCs and the Rashida Tlaibs, right? It's the same kind of thing. Nobody, no American should be too poor to live. That's my whole thing, right? That's the big premise of the entire, or biggest premise, one of the biggest premises of the entire thing, of the entire reason I'm even debating this in the first place. I don't believe
Mhm.
that anybody should be too poor to live. I don't believe that anybody should have to shell out a small fortune to pay for a broken arm. I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think that we should be trying to stay with oil and the gasoline engine when we have the ability, we have the technology. In 2022, we're getting ready to roll into 2023 to make electric cars. There's nothing wrong with it. And I'm not saying those don't contribute to a bad environment. I'm just saying that they're much more sustainable than continuing to refine crude oil and the gasoline to make a profit. But anyway,
Okay. Wait, on that, hold on that gas cars thing.
Go for it.
Yeah, gas cars, electric cars. You know what lithium is, right?
I do.
Okay.
Lithium, it has to be mined. Why do you ask?
Because lithium is one of the most toxic metals that you can pull out of the ground. It's very volatile as well.
Lithium and cobalt, yeah.
Correct. And also recycled batteries, or I'm sorry, batteries can't be recycled. So
Mhm.
what do you do with that? That's my question, right? That's question number one. Question number two, which I'm happy to provide in a second. Who invented electric cars and why?
Well, first of all, one thing at a time.
I don't need a specific person, but you can be a country, maybe.
A country that is the inventor of the electric car?
Yeah. Like what country do you think the electric car was invented in?
I want to say America, but I feel like I'm wrong.
It was France and the UK, apparently. Why do you think it was invented there? Like, what was the reason that somebody was like, I want to invent an electric car? Do you think it was just like for fun or like
Oh, Scotland.
curiosity?
Um, I wouldn't say it was for curiosity. I would
Mhm.
say that you invent an electric car to test the waters. Really test the
But
waters of
mm,
what you can achieve while still simultaneously. I don't know. I don't know. I
so,
would say to test the waters though.
okay. Um, hold on. And by the way, it looks like Google says anyway that the electric car was invented in 1888. So quite a long time before this like climate change thing really became a problem
Sure.
because of industrialization, right? So um, I would say anyway that companies like GE, companies like Ford, companies like Tesla, right, specifically,
Mhm.
the reason that they're making electric cars now, do you think it's purely an environmental concern?
Oh, of course not.
Okay, just so we're clear, right? But do you think electric cars, once they're popularized, right, and once it makes financial sense, and once the consumers want them at whatever price they're at, do you
Mhm.
think that the production and manufacture of these cars will help like reduce the strain on the environment? Would you agree to
I
that?
I would I would say yes, and the reason I say that is because regardless, you're gonna have some sort of impact on the environment. I just believe that electric car lessens that.
For sure.
When you're drilling for crude oil in order to refine that into gasoline, you end up leaving toxins in the ground anyways through fracking. That's one of the issues with fracking.
Yeah.
So so regardless, you're gonna have an a bad input on the environment.
Mhm.
However, electric cars don't have what is it? Emissions. They don't have
Mhm.
emissions like
Yeah, they don't,
gasoline
yeah.
engines do.
Mhm.
So that's why I
Exhaust.
and a lot of other people that agree with me believe that electric cars are. I mean, well, they're the future anyway. That's inevitable.
Mhm.
But I think that they're better for the environment in the long run, as opposed
And
to
by
the
the
short.
way, I actually agree with you. I completely agree with you. Electric cars are probably way better for the environment. Um, Earlier you said though that the reason that electric cars aren't like super widespread right now is because of capitalism. Would you agree with that? I just want to double check. Would you agree with that or would you disagree with that idea?
I mean, I'm really kind of split because part of me feels like it's because of capitalism, but part of me also feels like it's because, well, I mean, I really do. I really would say capitalism because you can't really, I mean, you can I'm not monopolize. You can capitalize electricity. We did it all the time with our electric bills. Just like you can, capitalize oil. But I'd have to say that, yeah, it is because of capitalism. I mean, that's the only reason to me that electric cars are not widely available. And I get that they're expensive to make, but so are hybrid engines, so are, Ferraris. Those are expensive to make, right?
Mhm. Well, okay, do you think more Teslas get sold, or do you think more Ferraris and, like, luxury cars get sold?
Oh, I definitely think more Teslas get sold.
Probably, right? I don't have the numbers on that, but I would
I would
wager
I would put
probably
money
Tesla.
on Teslas. Yeah.
Okay,
But
so
the thing is, it's also not just Tesla. Tesla's not the only electric car company.
yeah, well,
Mercedes
that's
is
why
doing
I
electric
listed.
cars, Volvo,
Sure.
who else?
I'm just
There's
using
other
Tesla as, like, the classic electric car. We know electric cars as, like, Teslas. They're not only, but for sure, right? There is
sure,
competition in the electric car marketplace. I think you would agree with that.
sure.
Um, I would say that the reason that electric cars and Teslas or, electric cars are not as popular as they are right now is because we haven't made them as good for the consumer as, standard combustion engines, okay?
What do you mean by that?
So, like, you can't the charging stations take very quick, even fast charging can take, probably an hour and a half, I'm guessing, if not longer than
Sure,
that. Again, I
sure.
would need
But
to look
there's
up to be sure, but it's meanwhile, I can go to the gas station and I can fill up in a matter of 4 minutes with standard gasoline. Not only that, I can drive much, much further using a standard gasoline, and combustion car than I can with a
mhm,
Tesla. Not to mention that depending on the car that you get, standard combustion engine cars can be 1/5 or 1/8 the cost of a Tesla, right? So these are the big, big problems, but there's a solution. Capitalism. This is what the solution is to this electric car, too expensive, not good enough problem, right? Tesla, GE, Ford, Rivian, or I think it's Rivian is the other one. All of these companies are putting so billions and billions of dollars into R&D, into research and development to make these cars, more effective, longer lasting, faster charging, more
mhm.
like better for the environment, and more desirable by consumers. Meanwhile, under a socialist utopia, which I know is not what you're advocating for, but under a socialist system, if all of these companies are owned by the state, there is no incentive to improve your product. All you need to do is just sell more of the same thing. There's zero competition because these industries would just be owned by the state.
Sure,
So
that's true.
capitalism is actually the solution to not only these technological problems, but these environmental problems. Now, to not make it seem like I'm hiding it, I am attacking your third point right now, but I think it is almost indisputable that capitalism is the reason we have electric cars. I was sort of getting at this a moment ago whenever I asked why you think people in or somebody invented an electric car. Why do you think people are making electric cars now? It's not for the betterment of society, right? It's because they're greedy. It's because they want to make money. And it's
Sure.
because they want their products to be as desirable for the consumer as possible.
And,
Would
and
you
I'm glad you said that. But
Mhm,
I wanted to go back to some of the things you did say. First of all, you said that you mentioned charging versus going to the gas station.
mhm,
Yes, going to a charging station takes time, and yes, it is a long time compared to going to the gas station. However, Tesla's offered a solution to that, which was installing the electric charger deal inside your home or outside your home. It can be in your garage or outside your
mhm.
but that way you could effectively charge your car before you go to sleep and wake up the next morning to a full tank of gas and air
For
quotes,
sure,
obviously.
for sure.
Um, Not only
Okay.
that, but Tesla
Mhm,
also offers a feature to where it shows you on the little deal thing, the screen,
mhm,
where all of the closest charging stations to you are while you're on
mhm.
a road trip or just
Yep.
generally.
Yeah.
So I mean, you combine those two things, and yeah, your electric bill may go up charging your car at home, but that's money that you're not spending on gasoline. Think about how much money you spend on gasoline every month. Now compare that to every year. Now compare
Yeah.
that to 10 years. right?
No, hold on. I understand that gasoline is like way more expensive than just raw electricity from the sort of Tesla pump. I don't know what those
Sure,
the charging stations, right? Totally get that. But the upfront cost for buying a Tesla is ludicrously high, right?
right.
It can
And I was
I've
actually
seen Tesla like car payments that are
mhm,
sometimes twice what a mortgage is. They're
right, and
expensive, expensive cars.
I got that. I do. That's why I looked up 2022 car prices. I took two cars. I took a, and I'm gonna make it even easier on you. I took a 2022 Honda Odyssey. You can get that on the low end for $33,040. The high end is $48,770. While a Tesla Model 3, same year, 2022, you can get for $46,000 at the high end and $32,000 on the low end. So they're roughly the same price for the year.
Mhm. For sure.
Um,
This is still a around a $35,000 car, right? A lot of people are
that's any
getting
car.
cars. That's
I
not
took a
any car.
station wagon.
That
I literally took a station wagon
what you
and
said,
I
what
compared it
year
to
is it?
Tesla.
It's 2022?
2022 station wagon, and I compared
Okay.
it to a 2022 Tesla.
Is everybody buying brand new cars?
Of course not.
No.
Everything's too
Yeah,
expensive
so
now.
that's
Of
my
course not.
point. The average person is not buying a 2022, like, RAV4, like, that's not the
Oh,
average
yeah,
person,
sure,
right?
sure.
So I think most people, especially with what we were talking about earlier, most people on minimum wage salaries or, like, lower end $30,000 a year salaries are not
Mhm.
gonna be able to afford these cars, but, like, what was it, like, 40 years ago? I'm super firing from the hip right now, so my numbers are not gonna be
Go ahead.
spot on. But,
You're
like,
good.
40 years ago, plasma TVs came out, and they were literally thousands and thousands of dollars for a
Mhm.
plasma TV. I can get a plasma TV going to Walmart spending $300 now, right? But the reason that that happened is not because like, deflation, like, devalued the cost of it. No, it's because of innovation. It's because capitalists got together and they said, "Hey, we wanna make as much money as possible, so let's make the best plasma TV for the lowest amount of money," right? And then I'll finish with this, on this topic. Who came in and bought the really, really expensive plasma TVs to put the money into the hands of these companies that were making them so that they could then put this money into R&D to develop lower and lower cost plasma TVs? It was really fucking rich people,
Right,
right?
rich people that could afford it at the time. Sure.
Correct, correct. And these really, really rich people are the ones that are putting money into these new technologies to eventually, through capitalism and through research and development, lower the cost and increase the efficiency and
Mhm.
desirability of these technologies and these products. But it's only because of capitalism that we have that.
And I agree with that. I'm glad you said that. That is a very capitalist answer to the car market.
For
And
sure. Okay, so
a
what
democratic socialist answer to that would be the government has any opportunity to invest a certain amount of money into electric car companies, thus lowering the price for the average person to receive one. That's
yep.
the more socialist answer to that. There's more than one way to answer a question. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not,
Okay. Real
but
quick.
I'm
So
that's how I would do that.
the federal government right now, and I'm waiting for this webpage to load. This is also not something that I looked up because we're on a different topic at the moment. But the federal tax, and again, I'll link this here in just a sec. The federal tax credit for new all electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles, federal tax credits up to $7,500 for electric vehicles, right? Made
Mhm.
on or during or after 2010 are eligible for this tax credit. So the government is putting money into these vehicles, but this has almost nothing to do with democratic socialism. There's nothing. This is happening under capitalism, under a standard
Right, but
democracy.
would you say that's raw capitalism, or would you say that's capitalism with socialist policies? Because there's no real
Definitely
reason
not raw. Yeah, it's definitely not raw capitalism for
I mean,
sure.
because there's no real reason for. I mean, if you were to say yeah, it's raw capitalism, I would say that there's no legitimate reason for the government to put any money into electric cars when we're making so much off of gasoline. That's my whole thing. Even with a hybrid engine, you're still having to buy gasoline. So I mean, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily
Sure.
raw capitalism. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm just saying just
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
that out there.
But again, I
Um,
still don't know what this has to do with democratic socialism. This is more akin to a mixed economy.
sure, and I was just putting it out there. It was a side note,
Okay.
sidebar.
Okay. So, okay, would you hold on? Let's go for a real quick hypothetical, just to so I see where your mind is at with this electric car thing specifically.
Mhm.
Um, would you say that if you had a socialist economy, not democratic socialism, if you had a socialist economy, do you think that the government, because they own all the industries, do you think that they would put money into research and development to invent electric cars, or do you think they would say, "Hey, we have combustion engine cars, we have gas powered cars, and hey, these are already making us a lot of money. So, like, what does it matter? We're not competing against anybody. In fact, we don't even really need to make better cars. We just have what we have. So, let's just keep pumping these out and making the consumer buy whatever crap we manufacture." Which what do you think is going on there?
Well, I mean, I really can't answer that because I'm not advocating for that for that exact reason.
Can you give a
Um,
hypothetical?
but
I know you're not advocating for
hypothetically,
socialism, but I just want to again, I'm just trying to see where
I
your mind's at.
mean, I mean, hypothetically, that would fucking suck because what happens if
Mhm.
they're putting out shitty cars? You have no choice
Mhm.
but to buy those terrible cars.
I agree. Okay. Okay. So
That's what I'm
so
saying. Which is all the more reason why democratic socialism is better than socialism because under democratic socialism, the people could say, well, we don't really want you to continue to give us shit cars, right? We want to progress. That's our biggest. That's my biggest, at least. Um, biggest thing is progression, moving forward. We've been on the gasoline engine for how long now?
probably about 130 years.
Right. We need to move past that. Yo,
Okay.
these
So
companies,
Mhm.
Chevron, Shell, Exxon, they've made enough money off of this damn gasoline. We need to move on. We need to figure out another way to move on.
Wait, real quick. Do you not think that current energy companies are putting any money towards like electric vehicle development?
Energy companies, as in
Like the companies that you just listed, Chevron.
Shell. Oh hell no!
Like,
Why would Chevron, Exxon, Shell? Why would they put money towards
you
investing in
you
electric cars?
just
Why would
you
that's
just
like
decided.
putting money into your competition. That's their competition. So no, I don't. Of course, they're not putting money towards that.
Give me just a
They're
second.
putting money. They're putting money towards drilling for their crude oil to refine that into gasoline so that people continue to pay it, which is why gas prices are so high right now. Not because of Joe Biden, but because of these companies wanting to charge more and more and more for gasoline. Now, granted, the prices have gone down a little bit, but they're also starting to go back up, at least over here where I am.
Brandon, real quick, can you
But
look at that PDF that I just sent you? It is the Human Energy Company from Chevron Technology Ventures, future energy funds investing in innovation with potential to play a critical role in the future energy system, industrialization, decarbonization, energy mobility, or emerging mobility, energy decentralization with two little nice pictures of a of a solar panel and a windmill, circular carbon economy with, again, I have not looked at this. I'm just pulling this up. So they're
oh,
putting quite a lot of money towards these green energy subsidies, right? And they're investing in Chevron is because they're not a oil company; they're an energy company. So as much, however they can uh, create and sell energy, they're going to do it. This is another one that I'll gladly send to you as soon as the web page loads. Um,
we're on two different pages. I was talking about the actual private companies that are mining the oil. I thought that they were owned by those companies.
okay,
I didn't know they were separate.
so well, no, Chevron does a lot of oil manufacturing, I'm sure. But this is another web page that I just sent in the finance chat. Chevron starts deploying EV charging stations at its gas stations. So if Chevron wants to kill the electric car industry because it's a threat to them, why are they putting so much money towards the electric car industry? And by the way, I have an answer to
Mhm.
this. This is not a trick question, just so we're on the same page. I have a very clear answer to this in my mind,
I would
but
say
what
I would say that it is more to I would say that it's less about electric cars and more about hybrid cars. That's what I would say. Other than that, I
do
don't
you not
really know because
okay.
if I was yeah, I'll let you take it.
No, no,
What do you got
okay,
it?
so the answer that I would put forward is they know there is a fuck ton of money in the electric car industry. So I really don't care about the specific, like, micro, like, or subcontractors that are drilling the oil. It might be a threat
Mhm.
to them, but the larger corporations like Chevron, like whatever other energy companies, They don't give a shit where their money comes from. They just want to make the most money possible because, by the way, they're greedy. And if I may attack one of your other arguments, give me just 1 second. Where is that? Right here. So with the capitalism breeds greed and hate argument, okay? Whenever I
Mhm.
first read this, it almost stumped me, okay? It almost stumped me. How do I argue against the greed that comes along with capitalism? Okay? It was a real mind fuck for me for a second. And then I realized I can't. So I'm not even going to try to. Trying to fight the concept of human greed is a Herculean task in and of itself. Okay. Greed
Mhm.
is, the way I see it, completely endemic to human beings and our psychology. We all long for more than what we have currently. It's just in our nature. But the wonderful thing about capitalism is that the way to satisfy one's greed, excuse me, I'm so sorry. The wonderful thing about capitalism is the only way to satisfy one's greed, you can't just like take it at gunpoint. Like you could, but that would be like a crime, right? So the only way to satisfy one's greed in a capitalist society, in a capitalist economy, is to provide, again, a product, a service, or perform labor that somebody else finds useful enough for them to pay you for. And even then, nobody can force you into an agreement that you don't wish to be a part of, right? But that's not the case under a socialist society. Even a democratic socialist society, if the government is forcing you to operate your business under the schema that they dictate, all of that competition goes away. All of that drive to innovate, to create new technologies, to solve people's problems, it goes away. So all of these problems that we're coming up with that are could absolutely be present in a capitalist economy are doubly, triply, quadruply so under a socialist economy. And I still want to nail down exactly what you're thinking we could replace capitalism with, and exactly the I really want to flesh out what democratic socialism would work, like how it would work. But I want to show you, like, hey, there's solutions to all of this stuff.
And I don't disagree. My only thing with democratic socialism is that it wouldn't function too much different than the way we live our lives now. It would just remove
Really?
the incentive. It would remove the incentive to be greedy. That's one of the biggest things that I think is so great about it. It removes that. It removes that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you can have that while simultaneously the government not controlling everything. That's why
Okay.
raw socialism fucking sucks. I realize that. But democratic socialism is different because the government does not control everything. Everything's not controlled by the state.
Okay.
Everything is
Real
still
quick.
controlled by the people.
Okay. So let's say you're in charge, right? You're Yeah, I want to get your exactly what you're getting at, right? So Brandon is voted in as the dictator of, let's say, America. And I know
Oh
dictator
my
has a
god.
negative connotation,
It
is
does.
but let's forget about that. I really don't mean it in a negative way. I'm just trying to get exactly what you would do. Um, I start a business. I want to start a business, but I don't want it to be a worker co-op or anything like that, right? I own the business and all of that stuff. Would you force me to make my business a worker co-op? Or would you say,
Well,
"Hey, we're just advocating for democratic socialism, take it or leave it"?
well, how would you run your business if it's not like explain that to me?
No, okay, so
I'm just trying to push the bounds, trying to understand what it is you're asking.
for sure, right? Let's take the world as we have it now, right?
Okay.
The way we run it, and your president or your dictator, president, and you get to enact whatever policies you want.
Okay.
How would your policies affect me as a business owner? And I'm gonna run it. I'm gonna run it like a regular. I'm going to try to make money. I'm going to try to pay my employees a good wage.
Mhm.
I'm going to try to make a product or a service that I,
Mhm.
I really believe in, and then I think other people will want to pay me for. And I'm
Mhm.
going to run it how I want to run it. Would
Okay.
you, as like the leader, with your policies, would you force my company or me to run it democratically, or would you say, hey, if you don't want to, whatever, no big deal. We're just really advocating for it. What are we doing?
Well, I don't want to say that you would be forced to run your company democratically because that's not the point of your company. That's how the government works, not how your companies work. However, if you were to employ people, you would be required to pay those people an amount that would allow them to be able to live, from one. But that's really the only, which I mean, that's how it is now anyway. You have to pay your workers. That's a law. Um, but I wouldn't tell you what you can and can't do in your own business. You still have rights to privacy under a democratic socialist economy. Like you still do.
A right
You
to
would just be
property,
required,
like private property.
you would have the right to private property as well. You have that.
Okay. What? So it's really just a minimum wage. Is that what we're talking about?
It's mainly minimum wage, healthcare, schooling, public, basically everything in the public domain would be run by the government.
Okay.
Air quotes. But you would still have private property, you would still have the right to private business.
Okay. So a couple of things.
Go for it.
This doesn't have anything to do with the definition of democratic socialism that we laid out in the beginning.
Okay.
Agree or disagree?
Let me look at the definition again.
Here, while you
Because
do that,
I'm
wait, hold
not
on.
because I'm not
I'm gonna give you a lot of time to think. I need to take a whiz right quick. I promise I'll be back
for it.
real quick though. All right, I'll be right back.
Mhm.
Okay. I am back. Real quick, can I ask you a question, Brandon? I got one question, and then we can hop right back into it because it'll tell me a lot about like exactly like what we're discussing. Okay.
Go for it.
Have you heard of the company called Mondragon or Mondragon?
No.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and go into what you were talking about with like the way that you see democratic socialism.
Okay. So I found something that will really try to explain where I'm going with this. And I want to read this to you. This is how democratic socialism allows for private ownership. A functional democratic socialist state will use policies such as wealth taxes and the creation of sovereign wealth investments that buy public partial ownership of a market based on based of private and shares of publicly traded corporations and index funds to create a basis for universal basic income for citizens who do not or are not able to work, parentheses, such would not be able to, quote, get rich, but would scale to what in conventional terms would be lower middle class in most markets to pay rent / mortgage, buy clothes, food, and pay for the community owned power. And the modest amount left over for entertainment and pursuits of personal improvement. So yes, you can still have your private business, you can still have, your private land.
I'm sorry, would you mind
Under
screenshotting
this,
that and putting it in the finance chat,
yeah, I'll give it to you.
please? Thank you. So you can,
It's on my
so,
computer. It's on my computer.
okay.
I'll just send you the link.
Okay, yeah, that'll work. That'd be perfect.
Yeah. I'll log into my Discord in here. I don't know if it'll log me out of this one.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, Seth.
But while
yeah, Seth, do you have any any questions for either me or Brandon as the moderator?
Not really. I mean, I did
Okay.
write some stuff up, but I guess let me see where I posted it in the finance chat, I think.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't want to read it because I didn't want my sort of position to get altered at all.
So, like what I put for like the whole Chevron Shell thing. Did he turn off his camera? Okay.
Sorry, I'm doing something.
I basically just said because like they know that their business is unsustainable. Like they're putting money into the replacements because if they don't, they just disappear. Like it's kind of an exit strategy, right? The way I see it.
Yeah, I mean that absolutely could. Well, I think he said that it would log him out for whatever reason. I don't know why that would be. But Yeah.
We can edit this out
No, I
later.
mean it definitely could be an exit strategy. For sure. I think it's probably more along the lines of they just want to keep making money, and if this is the new industry that they can make money in,
Mhm.
and they still make money in oil and gas and stuff like that, I don't see why they wouldn't make some investments in that if they can see some good returns on capital.
As for
Um,
the whole car discussion, sustainability stuff, uh, I just noticed that train discussion and suburbia discussion was completely missing, and I feel like both of those are pretty
did you say
important.
the train discussion?
Like they're like talking about trains at all. There's literally zero talk about that or public transit in general. That's a, like I feel like those are pretty important things to bring up when you're discussing sustainable development and specifically gas cars, in my opinion at least.
Wait, hold on. Brandon just asked me to add him back.
Oh yeah, he has to join. Has to join one of the other voices.
I'll put it
Oh
in
yeah. While Brandon's getting that sorted, I did just want to say for the record, Brandon, you've been incredibly cooperative with like answering like specific questions about exactly what we're talking about. So I really do appreciate the openness to clarifying questions. I think it's been really conducive to a healthy conversation. So again, I told you this before, but I'll say it again. Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is just chaos. Okay.
It's
I have
chaos.
this thing in here.
Google won't work.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I need a.
There's a link.
I think I need a. Oh, perfect.
There's my source. But long story short, that took way more time than I expected. But you can still have private property under a democratic socialist economy. I don't understand why we don't.
No. Yeah, I definitely wasn't getting confused about that. I just wanted to really nail down exactly what we were talking about. Because yeah, raw socialism, as you pointed out earlier, does not really allow for that. But also, I wanted to know exactly what your sort of enforcement procedures would be for if we were running under a democratic socialist like society, and I didn't want to sort of abide by that rule set or a schema.
What you said? What my enforcement policies would be?
Yeah, basically.
Well, it depends on what it is that you're not doing. What are you not doing? Are you not paying your workers? Are you
No,
not?
we're not operating under a worker co-op system.
We're not working under a worker co-op.
Correct. So
Because I forgot.
I'm not running my system democratically. My business, I'm not running it democratically. It's top down.
I mean, in this situation, you probably, I don't know. I don't think that you would be needed. If you're trying to get me to say that you would be thrown in prison, that's not what I'm saying.
No,
I don't think that you would be
I,
thrown in prison for not wanting to do that. I think it would just be like a hefty fine. I don't believe that it would really be a prison sentence for not doing a worker co-op. I think that's
wait,
steep.
So I have to like go in on that, right? I need to ask you a couple of questions about.
Okay, because I'm trying to get an understanding of what you're asking. Like, if you're not operating your business as a worker co-op, which means you're not allowing, according to the definition that we put in finance chat, you're not allowing your workers to have a say or an opinion on how the business is working. Is that what you're saying?
You can have, sure, you can have an opinion on it. You can have a say. I don't care, but you can't dictate to me as the business owner how I run my business. As an employee, no. You can work and I'll pay you what we agree to pay you, right? Or if you want to go find another job, you're more than happy to do that, right? It's a free market economy.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't understand what you were asking. Okay.
Yeah, but how I, as the sole owner of the business, if I tell you, hey, this is your job, you don't get to be like, well, this is what I think my job should be. It's like,
Well,
no.
you can't do that. You can't do that under a capitalist economy.
No, I know. I'm aware. So
Right.
if I was the business owner and I didn't want to run my business
Mhm.
under a democratic schema, would there be any negative repercussions onto me and the business from the government? That's what I'm asking.
Now I understand what you're asking. Okay. I didn't understand the first 3 times. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as you having negative repercussions from the government, I would say yes, because that fundamentally goes against the whole point of socialism or democratic socialism, excuse me.
Okay.
That goes against the whole point. If workers can't have a say in what it is that they are, yes, they sign an agreement. Yes, you agree to certain terms. But when you're working, when you're owning a business, things change, things fluctuate. So workers need to always be able to have the ability to have a say on what's going on. If you were my boss and you say, well, I'm actually going to have to, deduct your pay by a whole dollar per hour or something like that, I should have the right to say, well, why? I should have the right to question and say, well, I don't agree that this is how this should operate.
You have the right to quit as well, just to be clear.
Yeah,
And
you
by
have,
the
of
way,
course.
I don't that would probably vary state by state, but I don't think an employer has the ability to just unilaterally, they
Oh,
might in
of course. I'm
Texas
just
because it's Texas, but you absolutely have the right to question your boss. But if you say, "No, my pay is this," and they're like, "No, it's not," that they it's the owner of the business, right? They're going to set your
right, but
pay at whatever you both agree, but the important thing to realize is you have the right to leave. If you don't agree to that, you have the right to leave,
right,
right?
you have the right to leave. You have the right to
Okay.
leave, but I mean, yeah, you have the right to leave, and I understand that. But I mean,
Okay.
under this economy, that's just not how it works. You don't get to say, I mean, there's so many different variables. I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can, but you don't get to say, oh, I'm only gonna do this much where my workers are concerned, right? And if they don't like it,
Well,
they can just leave. That's not how
but the
that works.
workers, I think we both agree the workers are only a fraction of what goes into like operating a business, right? There are a
Sure.
lot of other concerns. They might be an
Right.
important part for sure, but there are a lot of other concerns. So if I, okay, so then, okay,
I
hold
mean,
on. I just want to get, hold on, wait, hold on. I want to get right back on
go
track.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What you mentioned a fine earlier. What punishments are going to happen to me
Well,
under a democratic socialist like system? What is going to happen to me or my business if I don't operate that way? If I say no, I'm going to operate under the standard top-down business system.
that was first of all, that was before I had an idea of what it is that you were actually talking about. Um, but
Okay,
I mean,
mm.
go ahead.
Well, you said a second ago I wasn't abiding by the democratic like
Yeah, I
social
mean, you're
democracy,
not.
like
I
democratic
mean, you're
socialism.
not. I mean, you own the business, but
Correct.
and
Okay.
and I understand there's a lot. Of course, I haven't. Of course, I don't have a business, so you know more than me. But there is a
Well,
lot
I
that
don't
goes
have a
into
business
it,
either. I'm close to a lot of business owners, and I talk to them a lot.
right? And I
But
understand that. But without workers, you don't have a business. Point blank. Period.
mhm, for
So
sure.
there might be a number of things that you have to do, but one of your top priorities should be paying your people living a livable wage. Should be your top priority.
Okay, so
And I
look,
and go ahead.
right there, right there. I'm not married. Okay, so a couple of things. I'm not married to the idea of freedom, right? There are certain hypotheticals that you could give me to where I would be like, okay, yeah, less freedom in favor of this is okay. Similar to like dictatorships, I don't disagree with those. Like it's not a non-starter, right? You could lay out a hypothetical where I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe a dictator is like fine, right? Or like better than the alternative. Um, I'm not married to the idea of what like a livable wage is. That means nothing to me. It also the term fair, the fairness thing doesn't mean anything to me either.
Mm,
Fair is what people agree on, right? So again, like I said a little bit ago, if you go to to a potential employer and you're like, "Hey, I think my time is worth $15 an hour." And they're like, "Well, no, for that position, the standard market rate is 12. You're not going to get really anything above that as a new hire in this position." That's what the wage is. That's what the standard market rate is. you don't have a whole lot of individual power to be like, I should get paid more than, the standard market rate because because I need more money. The only thing that
Mhm.
you can do as an individual is improve your skills or like improve your ability to be able to be paid more so that you're not paid below what you need, right? So, but again, would the government under your authority, would the government punish me or my business for not operating under a democratic socialist schema? And if they would, how would they?
Well, the first part of your question is yes. You would be punished by the government because you're not following the economic principles
Okay.
that are laid down. I
Okay.
mean, that's the same thing as under
Mhm.
any economic system. But as
Correct.
far as the punishments, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. But what I personally believe is that you would need to reevaluate how you run your business, or you just wouldn't have the ability to operate in that state. I mean,
Uh,
that's
okay, what
really
if
what it
this is
is.
a federal thing?
If this is a federal thing, you would not be allowed to operate that business. I mean, that's just really what it is.
Okay, so let's take these two ideas that we have presented.
Okay.
You said that private property could exist under a democratic socialist system,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
But then you said if you don't operate your business
Mhm.
such that your employees get a direct
Mhm.
say in what the business does, you
Mhm.
wouldn't be able to operate,
Right.
correct? Okay.
Mhm.
These two things cannot be in the
And
same world at the same time.
I mean, but they can. They can.
No, they
It's
can't.
just
No,
yes,
hold
they
on.
can. If you
Because
have
they
a
can't
house,
be
if you have Jonathan, if you have a house, you can do whatever you want to do on that private property. But you can't just be kidnapping folks and having them captive on that land.
okay,
That's
but
where it crosses a line. It's the
these are
same
two
kind of
different
thing
things.
with this kind of
Because
situation.
because
It's
if
the
you
same.
said, okay, if you said, hey, um, or if I came to the government, I said, hey, I own this house, right?
Mhm.
This is my private property, but I have this person that they don't pay any of the rent or any of the mortgage, but they live in the house, right?
Mhm.
The government can't force me to abide by what they say in regards to what I do with my house because it's my
True.
property. So like
Right.
if
And
I
I get that.
okay,
But
so
pretending
if
as
you
if
get that, then let's put that to the private business thing. You
okay.
you can't force if we have the idea of private property and it's
Mhm.
my business, I put up the starting capital or I put up the debt or the whatever to get the business started and I
Mhm.
take on a new hire,
Mhm.
why should you be able to force me to allow them a say in what I do with my business?
Right,
Because
but
again,
Jonathan,
this
I
this
get what you're saying.
completely
I do.
erodes the idea of private property. It does.
I get it. I understand. I do. I really do get that. I do understand. I agree with you completely. However, that's the same thing as if you were to say, "Well, what if I was running my business and I decided I don't want to pay my workers?" The government is the government just not allowed to step in at that point? They have to
Wait,
step in at
okay,
some point, is what I'm
hold
saying.
on. No, no, no.
There has to be a line.
That's a really good question. Okay, let's dissect that a little bit. Just a clarifying questions, and then I can give you a real answer. By the way, real quick, Seth, is his camera working for you?
Is it not on?
Yeah, can you turn your camera off and then back on real quick?
Weird. Is it not on?
It's like
It's off.
loading. Okay, now try it again.
It's on now.
There we go. Okay, perfect. Okay.
Okay, that was weird. Why didn't y'all tell me? Jesus.
Well, because we were talking, it was really good. But we gotta know we're good. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Uh, shit.
I said that you wanting to run your business however you want to run it, it's
Oh,
the same
so
thing as if
no,
you were to say you aren't going to pay your workers.
not paying the employees. Okay, real quick. So I'll give you a legitimate answer to this hypothetical, but I want to ask a couple of clarifying questions.
Okay.
Is the new policy that the business is implementing, which is zero wage, right? Is the new policy um, being instituted at the start of a pay period? So, like the workers
Yeah,
have
for the sake of conversation, yes, it'll be at the start of the pay period, pay cycle.
okay. So, hey, y'all just got paid today. There, all of
Hmm.
your hours that y'all have worked is paid, but we have a new policy. No matter what or how hard y'all work, nobody's getting paid, right?
Okay.
the business, as far as I'm aware, I'm
Mhm,
not a lawyer, but if it were run my way, a business
mhm,
would absolutely be allowed to do that, and the
mhm,
employees would absolutely have the right to be like, "Wait, I'm not going to get paid," and I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, we're operating at a loss, so if you
mhm,
want the company to survive, and I'm not making any money either as the business owner, but if y'all want to keep working here for no money, we're going to have to do this for about a month, but none of that
mhm,
month's pay will be paid. It's just y'all are volunteering basically." And then we are at the end of this month, we'll be at a profit, so y'all will be able to
mhm,
be paid. I
mhm.
would be totally fine with that if the employees are like, well, sure, whatever, I'll just not get paid for this month. If the employees are consenting to do that, I see no problem with it. I see
Yeah, if they're
no problem with
consenting,
it at
then
all.
that's if they're consenting, then that's 100% fine. That's
Okay.
100% fine. But
Yeah.
if you didn't add that part, I would say that that wouldn't necessarily be right because they signed an agreement saying they would get paid. They signed an agreement saying they would get paid, and now
Yes.
we're in a
I'm with you.
situation where, as I said earlier, businesses fluctuate, things change. Like I said earlier, we're in a situation where now they're like, okay, well, I won't get paid for a month, so I have the
Mhm,
choice to either quit or
mhm,
stay and then resume my payment or resume getting paid the month
mhm,
after next. So
mhm.
yeah, I mean, that's if they consent to that, then that's on them.
Okay. So then I don't understand what the issue is.
I don't either. What?
If the employees are entering employment
Mhm,
with an employer under a democratic system, and the
mhm,
employer says, "Hey, yeah, the president says that we have to run democratically. We're just not going to do that
mhm.
until he comes in, right, or the government steps in and gets us in trouble. We're just not going to do that." And if the employee is like, "Well, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. I just want to have a job."
Well,
Why does the
I
government
was.
have the right to step in and make me capitulate and do what y'all like want me to do. Do what the government wants me to do. And
Well, I mean,
I have a second question.
okay.
What happens if I don't pay the fine?
Then you would go to jail the same way. It's why are you acting like this is a completely new country that's never happened before?
No,
It's the same sort of
because
concept as the United States. It's just not run on greed and this these it's not run on greed. Yeah. I just
okay.
that I just I don't
So
understand.
earlier when you kind of semi accused me of trying to get you to say something, which I wasn't. I was just picking at your
Mhm.
brain. You sort of said it in a ridiculous manner. You said, if you're trying to make me say that you're going to go to prison, no. If I don't pay the fine because I disagree with the law, I would go to
Mhm.
prison.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the same way that
Okay.
operates anyways.
Uh,
Um, but
sure. Yeah.
I use
But in this system, we have private property, and in your system, we wouldn't. My property would be a common property, meaning anybody who's associated with that property has a say in it. That's not private property anymore. That's common property.
well, I mean, the reason I say that is because you have the right to operate your business the way you want to operate it. However, there is a line that can't be crossed. It's the same thing with any other kind of property. There's a line that can't be crossed. Yet, like it's the same thing, and I know it's not exactly the same thing, but it's a similar thing with my rights. I have the right to say and express myself however I want. But of course, there's a line I can't cross, right?
Hmm.
There's always
Sure.
going to be a situation, no matter what it is we have, your house, your car,
Mhm.
your laptop, your phone, anything. The government has information. The government has an ability, some way, shape, or form, to take or use your stuff however they see fit. That's just how the government works. That's how the
Mhm.
United States federal government works. That's always
Okay.
how it's been.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah,
Okay.
there's a line that can't be crossed.
Okay. Do you know? I don't know exactly. We've had a couple of conversations about like legal stuff. Do
Hmm.
you know about the concept of standing? It like standing in a court case.
No, I don't.
Okay.
How does that
So
relate to what we're talking about?
I'll ameliorate. So standing in a court case, right? If you punch Seth, right, and I sue you for that, that lawsuit would not fly. And the reason that that lawsuit wouldn't fly is because I don't have standing in the case. I was not affected by this interaction, right?
Okay.
I could give you another hypothetical. If you go to Chick-fil-A and they give you bad food and you get sick because of that, I
Hmm.
can't sue Chick-fil-A on your behalf because I had nothing to do with what happened. Only you would be able
Okay.
to sue Chick-fil-A. Right?
Okay. Sure.
Okay. Take this back to what we were talking about a second ago with the business and stuff like that. In your opinion, because we're talking about a new rule that we might want to implement into the way that our society and our system of laws work right now, right? We're talking about a new rule that you have to run. By the way, real quick question: would this be all businesses, or would this be only some businesses?
All businesses, all the way across the board.
Great. So we're talking about implementing a new rule that all businesses must abide by, in that they have to run their business democratically, akin to a worker co-op. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. What, in your mind, gives the government standing to tell you how to operate your business, to tell you to abide by this new rule, right? What gives the government standing to implement this new rule?
What gives the government standing to implement that rule is the fact that the businesses, whatever you're selling, whatever service you are putting out in society, everybody, I'm trying to figure out how I want to put it. Most, if not all people in society are going to benefit from whatever service you're putting out. So that then comes back, at least in my opinion, that comes back to the government, because that's obviously how that works. That gives the government the standing to do that. Now, we also have to define that owning a business, it depends on what kind of business we're talking about. Because are we talking about a small, like, mom and pop business, or are we talking about like a corporation? I get that I said that this would be all the way across the board, but I'm just asking for the sake of your example.
Let's take, because we were talking about small businesses earlier, because I could see you elucidating the argument with a larger business like easier. So let's just talk about mom and pops, and then we can go to bigger businesses if you want to. It would make, to me, it makes more sense that way.
Okay. I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about running your business democratically.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to define what when we're talking about running a business democratically, right? As a worker, you have the right to obviously be paid. You have the right to question your bosses. You have the right to his camera come off. You have the right to Seth, are you alive?
You good, Seth?
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
What was I saying? You have the right to question your boss. You have the right to be paid. You have the right to do. I'm really trying to explain it. I am not trying to dodge the question. I'm just trying to explain.
No, I believe you
accurately. Because I get where you're coming from. I get that it sounds contradictory. I do. I understand that.
By the way, this is.
But I just feel like
now that we've gotten on this, I have a lot of questions about how you would operate and how a worker co-op would work under your system. But this is good that we're hashing this out. I like it.
I mean, it's a similar way to how you're. Oh my god, my AirPods are getting low. It's similar to how you run. It's similar to how businesses are run now under a capitalist economy, right? People have certain rights that are given to them by the government, and so yes, they might be working for a small business, but they still have rights that kind of overshadow the owner of the business. Does that make sense? It kind of goes over that owner.
Sure, but again, why should this be a new right, quote unquote, a new right that employees have?
Because if you don't run your business democratically under a democratic socialist economy, the problem with not running your business democratically is that it opens the door for not only greed, but it also opens the door to unsafe working conditions. It opens the door to people getting paid almost nothing while the business owners are getting more. It opens the door to everything that is the problem with capitalism. That's what makes democratic socialism different from capitalism. If you have to give some to receive some, is what I'm saying. You have to give some to receive some. So yes, in a way, it might not seem like it's a private property, right? But where the workers are concerned, it's not. Any other situation, sure, right? If you want to sell Confederate flags and Klan hoods, the government can't stop you from doing that. That is where it's more of a private situation. But where it becomes more of a public government interfering situation is where the workers are concerned, because the workers under a socialist economy, if you look at the definition of socialist, it's about the workers. It's about the people who are on the bottom. It's not necessarily about the owner at the top. It's literally the inverse of capitalism, basically.
Okay, so a couple of things. You said that under a capitalist society, or I'm sorry, you said that these, like, you have the right to be safe in the workplace, right?
Sure.
And under a capitalist society, you might not be because you have no say in how the business runs, and so you could have no say on the safety procedures of the business. Is that about
Right.
right?
Right. And that's where the government would step in and say, well, you have to make this
Mhm.
place safe for workers.
Okay, so we have that already
Hmm.
in our capitalist mixed economy through OSHA,
Hmm.
right?
Okay. Right.
So so that's one thing, it's already covered. I don't
Uh-huh.
know if we've talked about, like, ensuring that we have healthy competition in the society, but the FTC, that's what they do. They ensure that mergers and acquisitions, only go insofar as to, encourage, competition and innovation. I
Mhm.
have a quote here from, if I can find it in just a second. Right here. Let's take my glasses off. Even the first sentence of the FTC's merger review section states its job quite plainly. Quote,
Mhm.
the Bureau of Competition is committed to preventing mergers and acquisitions that are likely to reduce competition and lead to higher prices, lower quality goods or services, or less innovation. This is exactly the type of guide rails that capitalism needs to continue to give what it promises:
Mhm.
competition, efficiency, and technological advancement. So a lot of these government agencies already exist to protect workers, to protect consumers, and to
Mhm.
protect from, like, dirty, greedy capitalists that want to exploit people. And real quick, I have to mention, you said greed a couple of times. I'm not even going to try to acknowledge that, or try to fight you on the idea that greed doesn't exist in a capitalist society. But what I would posit that greed, when in a capitalist society, is actually a good thing. It's good. It's because you have to utilize your greed through altruism. Because the only way to make money in a capitalist society is by paying a good wage, having a good workforce, creating a good product, treating your clients and your customers well. These are
Mhm.
the only way to be greedy in a capitalist society. Otherwise, you don't have a workforce, you don't have customers, you don't have products or services. You're flat ass broke.
Well, I would agree with that mostly. You don't really have to pay your workers a good wage under capitalism. You don't.
You have to,
You don't because there will
correct.
always be
I misspoke.
because there will
You have to
always
pay. You
and
have to
I
pay your
get that.
workers an agreeable wage, the one that they agree to.
An agreeable wage. Yes, an agreeable wage is what you have to pay them. Um, but I mean, we see that. I mean, there are still corporations that are flat fucking rich, and they still pay their workers a minimum wage. So it doesn't necessarily have to be agreeable. Nobody would agree to minimum wage,
Yeah,
unless they were
what
desperate or poor
I was gonna
or
say.
anything like that.
Well, okay, so, man, because okay, so in high school, it's my senior project.
Mhm.
I wrote an entire project on why there shouldn't be a minimum wage. Okay, so this is sort of where my mind has been for a long while now. Um, let's say the minimum wage is what it is right now, 7.25, right?
Mhm.
What do you do about people whose time, in terms of, like, labor and wages, what do you do about people whose time is only worth $5 an hour and they can't be a server for whatever reason? Because I know the minimum wage laws are different with that.
Mhm.
What do you do with those people?
What do you mean by their labor is not worth $7 an hour?
The
What
it,
do you mean? Like, what situation would there be where someone's labor is not worth at least that much?
uh, I couldn't give you one off the top of my head. I can just give you a
Like if
hypothetical
they were like,
where their amount of production, they can't
mhm,
even produce more than $5 worth of additional value in anything. And
okay,
I'm
because
not talking about anybody who's mentally disabled. I'm not talking about that at
okay,
all.
okay. Well, I can't really understand a situation where somebody would be doing that if they weren't like I don't like if they're just not working, if they're just not doing
No,
anything.
no, they really wanna work a job. They really wanna
Uh-huh.
do something productive, but they are incapable for whatever reason. They don't even have the skill set of
Mhm.
doing something that's worth more than 7.25 an hour, okay?
Okay. So so
What
so
happens?
alleged so basically you're saying that if someone doesn't have if they're incapable of producing something because I guess that their time and labor is, equitable money, whatever. If they cannot produce something, that means that they deserve to be out on the street.
No, that's
Is
not
that
what
what
I
you're
said.
saying?
No, I'm asking
Okay.
you. I'm asking you, what would you do with those people?
Um, what do you do with those people?
I
Because
have an idea. I have a solution, but it's not a good one. It's one that people would not like. It's probably one that would get me voted out of office if I even tried to implement it, which
my
is
solution. Oh,
mhm,
go ahead. Sorry, I'll let you go first.
lowering or completely removing the minimum wage. That's what my
Okay.
actual, unironic, genuine solution is. Because, and I can give you a quick reason for that, is because this person who has no skills, who is potentially brand new to the labor market, they have an opportunity, even if it's not a lot of money, which $5 an hour is not a lot of money, obviously. But they have an opportunity to start working, to gain a skill set, and to eventually have their time be worth and have their skills be worth more than 7.25 or $5 an hour, right? But now with the current ways that our labor laws are set up, you actually can't do that. You have no access to that other than, I guess, um, maybe internships, but that's the only thing that I could think of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what would you do with somebody whose time was literally worth less than the minimum wage? What would you do?
I'm trying to think of a situation where that would even be the case because I don't want to sit around with hypotheticals. I'm trying to really
Well, hold on. Can you envision a hypothetical?
I mean, if we were talking about like a middle schooler who needed a job, that's really the only situation where I see someone
Sure.
because they don't have any skills.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this person, right? They're in middle school. They have too much free time on their hands. They always do all their homework. They're super smart, but for whatever reason, every time they go to apply for a job, the employers are like, "Hey, we'd love to hire you. There are no laws preventing us from hiring you, but if we hired you for 7.25, you would be detrimental to the business." Does that
Are we
make sense?
are we talking about a small business? Are we talking about what are we talking about? Like a
Any
chain?
any any business doesn't matter. It's not
I
the
I really don't know what you would do with a teenager. I mean, because paying them less than 7.25 an hour is not going to work. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they use that money for fucking video games, right?
what if
They
they
are.
have no wait, what if they have no expenses?
But I
Literally
mean,
none.
I'm saying if they would spend their money on video games or just something candy or whatever, right? That's that teaches them that you work for money. That teaches them how to operate in a capitalist society. Paying them less than what they would receive as an adult to me doesn't really fix the issue. That it's all about what they can contribute to society rather than helping them actually get on their feet, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Re
I mean,
Frankly, it doesn't. I'll be honest. It doesn't make sense, and this is why. If you don't know enough to be worth more, and nobody allows you to have a job, you're always going to not know how to make more money,
well,
right? Because look,
the
yep.
thing, Martin, your hypothetical doesn't make any sense because I'm trying to think of a person. If we're not talking about a person
How
who
does
has,
it?
if we're talking about a high schooler, that's completely different from somebody who is an adult and has no skills. That's what I'm trying to really
But
understand.
it's the same thing in concept. That's the important part.
It's
It
not just
is.
because
It is the same
if
concept.
it's an adult, that adult has to pay bills. That adult has to feed themselves. They don't have their parents. If it's a kid
If
that's bad at working a job because they literally have no skills, they can still rely on their parents. If it's an adult, they have
okay,
to be on their
so
own
then
the whole
so
time.
then so then the hypothetical that I'm laying out for you is actually an easier hypothetical to deal with than the other one, right? If this kid really wants to work a job, but wants to work like he doesn't want to open a lemonade stand, right? He doesn't want to do that shit. He wants to go somewhere, spend his free time, spend his leisure time, and
Mm-hmm.
make some money, and then be able to go like do whatever he wants to do, right?
Right, there's nothing
You
wrong.
would you well apparently there is because he can't, assuming it's a guy, whatever, it doesn't matter, he can't get a job because his labor isn't worth 7.25 yet. And you're
Well,
saying, hey, this being a roadblock to him being productive in society in any form or fashion, this roadblock is okay
mm-hmm.
for some external reason because like I don't know, where he's literally priced out of the labor market. And
Well,
so
depends on what labor market he's in. Like, is he like
any labor market, the labor market.
I'm trying to understand what is he doing to where he's not like his labor is literally not worth it. What is he doing or what is he not doing? Because that makes a difference.
He
If he
okay, how about that? I'll give you a hypothetical. He's a component runner at a widget factory, right? So he doesn't actually make the widgets, which is where the real money is made. He doesn't make the widgets. He runs tools from worker to worker because they only have a limited supply of tools. And so
Mhm.
his job that he would get paid $5 an hour for if the employers were allowed to, his job would literally just be running tools back and
Mhm.
forth, back and forth, back and forth, right?
Now
And
now we
the
have
and the reason that
simple.
you might want to do that is because the more that you work in that factory, let's say you get familiar with these tools and you get familiar with how the tools work. So
Mhm.
then once you're an adult, because I guess the reason is because he's a kid, he wouldn't be able to work on the assembly line because it's a little more dangerous than just running around. He knows how these tools function and he can develop a skill set to where as soon as he's allowed to, he can start making more money and now his time is worth more. But the
O
only roadblock is that minimum wage.
Okay, but I completely disagree with that. I think that's fucking stupid. I'm sorry. I'm not coming at you. I'm just saying, like, I just feel like there's something morally wrong with that because it does not, to me, and to anybody else who agrees with me, it does not matter what the job is that they are doing. The fact of the matter is that they are contributing to society. That's the main point. That's the objective. That's the point of working a job to
Is
contribute
it
to
bad?
society.
Is it bad to contribute to society? I'm
No,
confused.
no, that's not what I'm saying. What
Okay.
I'm saying is the
Okay,
point
then
job is to contribute to society, and in
yeah,
exchange, you get capital to where you can then go and do whatever it is that you want to do. So if he's
sure.
job, he's contributing to society. Even if that's just running tools, if it's flipping burgers, if it's cutting grass, it doesn't matter. He deserves at least 725 or more, depending on whether or not he has living expenses. That those are just the facts. I
Okay,
just
so this seems like a very arbitrary number because again, he's priced out of the labor market at the moment. Do we want him to contribute to society or do we not want him to contribute to society?
when you say priced out, what do you mean by that?
His time is worth less than what the government is allowing a business to pay him.
Okay, but who decides what his time is worth? He's
The
working a
employer. The employer decides.
then the employer should not hire him. If he's not going to be able to be paid 725 or more, he shouldn't be hired at that job. He should have to find a different job.
Okay, real quick. What calculation did you come to get to 725?
That's the minimum wage.
Oh, okay, so this isn't based on any math or anything. It's just it's arbitrary, right?
No, that was the conversation we were having.
No, I understand. It's arbitrary. The
Right.
government decided this number arbitrarily, correct or no?
Sure, that's correct. They
Okay.
did
So
minimum wage.
so the government is arbitrarily pricing this young man who wants to learn a skill.
Mhm.
They're pricing him out of the labor market and they are crippling him when he becomes an adult. He could have a higher skill set when he becomes 18 and then he can work in the assembly line, but the government is telling him, "No, you're not allowed to gain this skill set. We're not going to allow you to make money even if you have no expenses. We're not going to allow you to because for whatever reason the government feels they're morally superior to the business owner that's trying to make this young man a productive member of society."
Well, I don't think that
That's
it's
that's
about
what you're telling me right now.
well, here's the
Not
problem.
literally, but
Well, here's the problem. It's not about moral superiority. It's about
kind of, kind
it's
of.
well, it's not about the government thinking that it's morally superior to the business owner. That's not what it's about. It's about the opportunity that this business owner has to take advantage of this young man. That's the problem. This guy is what? You said he's not 18 yet, so he's what,
Wait,
16 years old?
let's say 16. But hold on, this is if anything, this is a charity work. This is a charity job. The business owner says, "Hey, we don't actually have this position right now. We're willing to make a position."
Okay.
Because the tool runner isn't making a product, right? That I established that earlier. The tool
Okay.
runner is not making a product. They're doing a service, right?
Okay.
This service is only worth a certain amount to the business owner. But the
Mhm.
business owner wants this young man to like get skills and learn how these tools operate, how to make widgets and all of that.
Mhm.
But because of the rules set forth in labor laws by the
Mhm.
government, the business owner is not allowed to teach this young
Right.
man, give him the opportunity to improve and get his skills at a higher value.
Sure. I understand what you're saying. I do. I get it. It's something that's been done out of courtesy. I understand that. But that's just the way that the government decided they wanted to do it. I mean, if they want him to work there and they want him to get the experience, then they could make it an internship, something like that. They would make
So
it an
you would what? Wait,
internship.
okay, hold on. Let me get this straight. You would prefer the kid work for nothing rather than work for $5 an hour.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm
That is
saying that
what you said. You said maybe an internship would work better because we can't pay him less than 725.
how
If
about this?
if $5 an hour is exploitation, for free would be massive exploitation.
But what you're saying, first of all, what you're saying is, oops, you want him to be able to get experience. That's the whole point of an internship. And
For
it's not
sure, but I want him to be able to engage in a consensual relationship with the business owner
okay, and that's fine.
for hopefully some money.
Do that, Jonathan. You have to do that across the board. You can't just do that for small businesses. You have to do it across the board, which means that
For
now,
sure. Yeah, well, I would do it across the board.
hey, but that now means that these big corporations can go and say, well, I'm going to hire a 15-year-old because I want to give him just an opportunity to work, and I'm only going to pay him $4 an hour. So then if they can only pay these kids $4 an hour to work these little jobs because there's no minimum wage,
I said
right?
5, so we're clear, but whatever.
Right? There's no minimum wage, so they can pay him 50 cents an hour to do the same.
And yes. And if the kid didn't want to do that, he doesn't have to.
Right, but what kid is going to turn out?
A kid that I'll give you a perfect example. What kid would turn down 50 cents an hour? A kid that got offered 75 cents an hour at a different factory. You know what? He would turn down that job if he got offered $1.50 at a different factory. This is how the labor market works.
No, do you realize how terrible that sounds?
No, because again, capitalism is built on consensual relationships.
Capitalism exploitation. If you're exploiting a kid for 75,
you just told him to work an internship, which is for free.
Right, but I would rather be working an internship and be able to go work somewhere else if I actually wanted to make money. Work an internship for experience.
He can't work anywhere else because of labor laws and minimum wage laws. He literally can't work anywhere else for any amount of money.
Well, here's the thing. You're basically saying that you would rather pay this kid $5 an hour than
for nothing. For nothing. No, I would rather because okay, do you know what a profit margin is?
I get what you're saying, Jonathan. I completely.
No, this is an important question. Do you know what a profit margin is?
I realize that. I realize that a profit margin.
So you understand that the business is running on very small margins, and you can only pay certain people so much. You can only pay them in relation to what they can do.
Right, and I understand that. But what I'm saying is, if you are a owner of a business and you know this kid personally, and you're like, oh, I want to give him a job, running tools so that he can get experience, and I'll pay him $5 an hour. Okay, on paper that sounds fine. That sounds fine on paper.
It also sounds fine in reality as well. But go ahead.
Not really, but okay. If you say, oh, I'm going to pay this kid $5 an hour because I want him to have a job, I want him to have experience, that sounds great on paper. But the problem is, not only do you have to do that across the board, that opens the door for so much exploitation that you don't even realize. If there's no minimum wage, why pay anybody at all?
Okay, because certain people's labor is worth more, right? So let's take a hypothetical. Right? I'll lay one out for you, Brandon. I'll lay out a hypothetical. You go looking for a job. No minimum wage, right? We're in the society that we are now, but there's no minimum wage. Okay. You go to a job and from prior experience, your labor is worth $15 an hour. That's your production value. Let's say you go to a business and they're like, hey, since there's no minimum wage, fuck you. We're going to pay you $5 an hour. And you're like, that's stupid. And you go to the next business and you're like, hey, they offered me $5. What can you offer me? And they're like, we can probably offer you $8 an hour. And you're like, well, no, my labor is worth more than that. So you go to a third business and they're like, you want a job? Yeah, we'll pay you $14, $15 an hour for sure. I don't know why they didn't pay you. We want your labor because your labor is worth that much. Do you recognize people get paid above minimum wage right now, right?
Yeah.
You understand this?
Yeah,
and without minimum wage laws, they get paid above that. That's crazy. How do you think that works?
Just because they're being paid more than minimum wage, that doesn't mean that it's sustainable. But also, I wanted to ask, because you keep on saying they decide their labor is worth X amount. Who decides that? Who decides that?
The market. No, there's a good answer to that. The market does. The market decides what your labor is worth.
Explain that. Explain how the market decides how much your labor is worth. Because I can go get it right now.
That thing that I just said a second ago, that was outlining how the market decides what your labor is worth. They bid up your wage, and as soon as you get to a point where you go into a business and you're like, hey, these guys just offered me $15 an hour. Can you give me 16? And they're like, no, we can't. It's not. No, the job isn't worth that much. Boom, right there. They just decided how much your capacity is. That's how.
But how do you differentiate that from profit margins? What if they're trying to make a certain amount and they can't pay you amount? They can't pay you how much you want to get paid.
Okay, then this is no longer a labor question. This is like a business finance question.
Huh?
This is no longer a labor question. This is more of like a business accounting question.
I was just asking hypothetically because like I believe that the minimum wage is there for a reason. Now, granted, it should not be fucking sunny for 25 an hour.
It is there for a reason. It was implemented during World War II, 1933, I think.
Yeah.
I think the first minimum wage was 25 cents an hour. So, but the reason for that was because, well, hold on. I don't remember exactly what the reason for that was. I think it was a war thing. I think, but I'd have to look into it more. But I don't like the idea that we're pricing people out of the labor market that want to work but can't work because of labor laws, because of minimum wage laws. I keep saying labor laws, but I mean.
I want to ask a different question. Is this something that's really widespread? Because is this really something that's widespread? Is there really just so many people that just want to work so bad and they just can't because they can't work for $5 an hour?
Probably not. Probably not, but I think it happens too much regardless. It probably does. If people are wanting to get into the labor market, but they're priced out of it, I don't think that's good. And I don't think that minimum wage laws necessarily increase anybody's wage. So like if we increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour, do you think that would just like work? Like it'd be no problem? Or do you think that like the economy would have to adjust pretty hard?
I mean, if the minimum, I mean, I won't say $15. Shut up. I won't say $15 an hour specifically. I'm saying if the minimum wage was on par with the amount of inflation, with the general cost of everything, right? If you were able to live using that minimum wage, if you were able to live off minimum wage based on how expensive everything is right now, no, I don't think that would be a problem. I don't think that would cause a problem with inflation. Because the flip side of that, the alternative to that is we pay everybody $7.25 to $9.25, maybe $10.25, and they just can't live, or they have to work 2 or 3 jobs. Like
or you pay them what the market decides their labor is worth without artificial price fluctuations like minimum wage laws.
Yeah, but I just think that's wrong. That is wrong. The market,
okay, so boom. Okay, hold on. Right there. You think it's wrong. That's what I was talking about a second ago with these normatively loaded terms like wrong, right? If it is a wage that the market has agreed is a good wage for this individual, that's what they make. Or they just don't have a job and they live on the street for sure.
Let's flip this table completely over. Okay, let's flip this over. Let's look at this from the flip side.
I thought we were doing pretty good. I thought we were doing all right.
No, I mean, it's great. It's a good conversation, but I want to flip this on its head because lost my train of thought. Oh, God damn it! I had a good one. I was going to drop a bombshell on your ass. Okay.
I believe it.
Okay, no. I remember. Okay, so you say that the market decides how much somebody is worth, how much somebody's labor is worth.
Sure.
And if they don't like it, they should just go find a different job. Is that correct?
Okay, no. First off, if somebody thinks that their labor is worth more than it actually is, you should go try to find a different job. But if you can't find a job for the amount that you want per hour or the salary that you want, you should improve your skill set.
You should improve your skill set. Okay, so let me ask you a question, Jonathan. I'm about to drop a bombshell on your ass. That isn't sustainable, and let me explain why.
Why not? Yeah, please.
If everybody did that, if everybody decided, okay, well, we're all going to explore our skill set, we're all going to be managers, who's going to work the lower class jobs? Air quotes. If we all decided, oh, we're all going to go be lawyers, we want to get paid a good amount. Mm-hmm. Who's gonna do other stuff? We're all going to be doctors. We're all going to go be politicians. We're all going to who's going to work the smaller class jobs if everybody's including their skill set? If everybody's
Yeah. So no, this is not a bombshell. This just isn't the way that the world works. You know how earlier you said you don't want to mess around with hypotheticals? This is a massive hypothetical that just would never happen, right? But let's take if we want to play around in fantasy land, you're right. Yeah, that would kind of mess up the system. But that's not how anybody works, right? But what would actually happen? You know what would happen? I'll tell you what would happen. The people that would work those lower class jobs, the supply of their labor would go down. Thus, their wages would go up because more people would be looking for that type of job. So actually, if more people did that, if less people wanted to work at McDonald's would have to start paying their employees and their potential new hires would have to start offering more because then they get a higher section of the labor pool. Because it's very often that people care exactly what job they're doing. We talked about this earlier. People more care about how much they're getting paid, right? So if everybody's trying to be a manager, right? If everybody's trying to be the manager of a Chick-fil-A, but the ground level employees of a Chick-fil-A actually make more than a manager, everybody's going to become a ground level employee, right?
Why would the ground level employees be making more than the managers?
Because the labor pool is smaller for ground level employees and it is
Right.
much larger for managers. That's
That.
why.
That's the whole thing. Why don't you just from Jump Street pay people the correct amount of money? Why don't you just do that?
Because that's not the way things work. Okay, hold on. Okay, this is a good question.
Oh, that
Okay.
was ridiculous.
Real quick, do you think, in terms of like out of a, okay, do you think more people can flip a burger at McDonald's, or do you think more people can manage a McDonald's?
I think more people can flip a burger. It's an easy.
Okay. Correct. So, by definition, their labor, because it's a larger labor pool, right? It's the supply and the demand thing. Because there's a larger labor pool, by definition, their time and their labor is worth less than a general manager. Do you understand that?
I understand that, even though I think it's fucking ridiculous. But yes, I understand. I understand fundamentally where you're coming. I do. I really do, John. I really do. And I'm not trying to be hostile. I'm trying to understand where you're coming
Well, you
from.
said you drop a bombshell, and that was kind of a shit question.
I mean, the fact of the matter, and I get that it's a hypothetical, but you've been dropping hypothetical after hypothetical. So now I decided that was my turn.
Yeah, because socialist utopias don't exist, so I have to ask hypotheticals.
I never said I was advocating for utopia. I never said that. I made it very clear, and you can play back the recording. I said, I know this isn't a utopia. I know it's not going to be perfect. But, I mean, everybody can't do that. Everybody can't raise
Everybody can't what?
And decide, oh, I'm going to go and do a better job, do a more high-paying job. Basically, what you're saying is if people decided they were all going to go and do a better job, the market would then flip because then the people that are being paid more money. That's what you just said.
Correct, because that's how labor markets function.
Okay, I follow you.
Labor markets function to always get back to homeostasis. But when you have the government implementing things like labor laws and minimum wage laws, not labor laws, I don't give a shit about labor laws, minimum wage laws, you're altering the homeostasis that the market is trying to find, such that, in fact, going back to the term market failure, you have a market failure in the labor market, such that you're pricing out labor that could be productive labor rather than drains on the system.
Okay, but look, how about this? What if you were to pay your workers a living wage? You will pay the base, not the managers, but the base workers a minimum wage or living minimum wage, and then the managers would get a raise as well to keep the balance, because I get that it's not the same thing run a McDonald's versus flipping a burger. I understand that. So you can still pay your workers a living wage while still giving your managers more than what they already had. Does that make sense? So
absolutely it does. Sure. But okay, so
I just disagree that people should be too. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, I want to lay something out, and I want to get your opinion on it. All right. Let's say what in your mind, what is a good minimum wage for, let's say, Texas, right? Because living, a livable wage is different everywhere you go, right? So let's say Texas.
Sure. I would say that a living minimum wage, at least in Texas, from what I've seen, is $18 to $19 an hour.
Perfect. I'm not even going to fight you on it because it's not that important. Let's say minimum wage is now $19 an hour. Companies have to have labor, right? So they will start hiring at $19 an hour. We don't dispute that because companies need employees, right? Those all ground level employees start making $19 an hour. Let's say managers, I'm making a number up, whatever. Managers get paid $30 to $35 an hour, and then everything shifts up, right?
Sure.
Let's say it's a McDonald's, right? Do you think the cost, as a customer, if you go to that McDonald's now under this new rule, would you say that the burgers have gone up in price, or do you think everything stays the same?
They've definitely gone up.
Okay, perfect. I absolutely agree. If this is all businesses, right, would all prices not go up?
Sure they would, but they already go up.
Okay, no, they absolutely do. They absolutely do. Now the $19 an hour is worth almost nothing because all prices have gone up.
And I get that. I do.
So we're right back to where we were.
What I'm saying is
money has suddenly lost all value because we're just going to make it whatever we want it to be.
That's less about how much people are being paid and more about capitalism as a whole. That's what I'm trying.
It's absolutely not. It's how economics works.
Jonathan. Okay, Jonathan. So what you are telling me is that you would rather people be too poor to live than have to pay a little bit more for a damn burger.
Who is dying of starvation in America?
Well,
If you're
Go ahead.
people are not dying of starvation in America. Okay, that's just not happening. Now,
Jonathan,
starvation in America, that's not a thing.
Jonathan, are
The
you
problem we have in America at the moment is people are too fucking fat. That's the problem we have in America. Which
Jonathan,
it's a crisis of consumption.
reality? You are so out of touch with reality. I don't even know how to even help you. People are not dying. I'm not saying that people are out here starving to death. Of course not. Yes, we have too many situations. We have too many food banks. We have too many situations where you can't really starve to death. But that doesn't mean that people are living okay. like what about dirty ass water like in Jackson and in Flint? Those things aren't
Okay,
being.
but what is that? Hold on, wait. What does that have to do with capitalism? That's
Well-
all like a government. That's a government problem.
Well, I'm just giving an example, right? Like it's
No,
not.
I'm glad you gave that example. That's not a capitalism problem. That's all a problem of the government.
Well, if I was able to finish, Jonathan.
I'm sorry, you gave me a bad example. I had to deal with it.
Okay, then just forget I said it then. Whatever. All I'm saying is people don't just need to eat, right? People also need shelter. People need to be able to, go to the doctor if there's something wrong. Those kind of things. It's more than just food. And so in paying people a living wage, they can get all those things. And I get that, yes, we're going to have inflation, but we have that anyways. We need to come up with a different.
This isn't just inflation, right? This would turn into hyperinflation very, very quickly.
So then
By the way, the people that would be hurt most by this policy is the one group that you're trying to help, right? The only people that would be able to like cushion this really effectively is really fucking rich people. They would be able to handle this. Really poor people would not.
Listen, Jonathan, I understand that. The rich people are not going to be affected. Only the working class and the lower class are going to be affected. I get that because the rich are always going to be rich. But I want to flip the script. I want to ask you, what do you propose then? How do you propose to fix inflation and to fix this whole people not being paid?
Okay, inflation is a completely other conversation. It's a completely other conversation. Different conversation. That has to do with like the Federal Reserve and interest rates and all of that shit. And I didn't research that at all. I know a little bit about it, but it's not what I came prepared for. My solution, my actual solution, and it has been for a long time, and I think the data supports this, is removing minimum wage laws and allowing labor markets and wage markets to, it would be labor markets, to function as they would naturally.
Right,
if
but
people want to get paid more, they can invest the time into their own skills and get paid more. That's what they could do. That's my solution. Is that a fix-all? No, but it's certainly better than what we have now. Minimum wage laws are the stupidest policy in the world. It's a zombie policy. It's a zombie policy in that it's been debunked over and over and over again, but we still have it because people get super emotional about minimum wage laws.
Because people need to live, Jonathan. If you take out the minimum wage, that opens the door for all kinds of abuse and for people to be taken advantage of.
How? Please, hold on. Lay that out. How? I mean, how? Lay that out.
Jonathan, I just explained that. If you
Okay, hold on. Okay, question. Are people right now getting paid more than the minimum wage? Easy question.
Of course there are.
How? Why isn't everybody getting paid $7.25?
Because there are certain jobs that are paid more. I get that.
Yes, because labor markets are efficient. Because labor markets work.
I'm not saying they don't. What I'm saying is that it opens.
You're saying that if you got rid of the minimum wage, everybody would be exploited. That's just not true.
That is. I'm not saying everybody would be exploited. I'm saying it opens the door for exploitation. If I could,
who would be exploited?
Jonathan, if I could open a business tomorrow and pay people however much I want to pay them because I get to decide or the market decides how much
the market does decide. And the market will decide very quickly that you should pay your employees what they're actually worth. Because if you don't, they will leave.
And I understand that. I do. But
how do you not understand what the problem of the minimum wage is?
But here's the thing. What if they cannot find a job at that point? If they can't find a job because none of these greedy business owners want to pay them more than $7.25, $8.25, $9.25 an hour, then what are they supposed to do? They're just out on the street.
If you can't find a job for what you think that you're worth, I have really bad news. You're not actually worth that much.
That's where the minimum comes in because it's not.
No, because then if you don't have a job because your position isn't a profitable position.
Jonathan,
Brandon.
you're not hearing me or
No,
listening.
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you perfectly.
I don't think that the market should be able to decide who is worth what, because the idea is not
What? I have
The-
to write that down.
the point of
I'm
working.
sorry, keep going.
The only reason that anybody works a job, other than maybe a handful of jobs, is to make money to take care of themselves and their families. That is the point of working a job, not to make money for another motherfucker. If I wanted to go make money for someone else, then fine. But most of the time, people are working because they're trying to take care of themselves. So for you to say, "Oh, the market decides," they're not interested. The people themselves are not interested in that. The people themselves are interested in being able to afford everything they need to afford. It's really that simple. It is literally that simple.
Okay, so under a democratic socialist society, how do you decide who gets paid what?
Oh, Jesus. Okay, sorry. What was that? Sorry.
In a democratic socialist society, how do you decide who gets paid what?
You decide who gets paid what based on what it is they're doing, which would be the same thing in capitalism. I'm not disputing that at all. But you would also have to follow a minimum wage guideline according to the level of inflation, according to how much things cost, the cost of production, all of those things. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. 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 Do you think there would be a higher unemployment rate under your system or under my system?
Well, the unemployment rate fluctuates regardless of the system.
Sure.
So
Well, in regards to like the dynamics of the like the market, right? If we're having like a recession, right, or if there's a war going on, all of these things are going to impact the market for sure. Let's take two identical worlds, right? One America's, right? One under your system where there is probably a much higher minimum wage, and one under my system where there's a much lower minimum wage. Okay. Which system do you think has a higher unemployment rate?
I think that I don't know how to answer that question because I could say both. I would say that they both would have an opportunity where they would have a higher unemployment rate. I really don't know that.
Okay,
Because
why do you,
it depends
why
on
do you think my system would have a higher unemployment rate if the barrier to entry to jobs is lower?
Sorry, repeat that.
Why do you think my system might have a higher unemployment rate if the barrier to employment is lower?
The reason I think that your job would have your system would have a higher unemployment rate if the barrier to entry was lower. What do you mean by a low entry barrier? Like easy requirements to get a job? What do you mean by that?
No, literally the only difference between our two systems, I have no minimum wage and you have probably a higher minimum wage. I'm not going to pin you down on a specific number, but you have a higher minimum wage than we have now. Correct?
Sure.
Okay. So the barrier to entry under my system is lower because if your time is only worth $5 an hour, you can still get a job.
Yes. You can still get it. I mean, yeah, I mean, okay, I see what you're saying. I follow you. Okay. Yeah, if you can still get a job, yes, you can get a job, but will you be able to take care of yourself is the question. It's not the question of if you can get a job. That's not the question. That's not the question being asked. The question is, are you able to take care of yourself, spend time with your family, be happy, because that's really important, right? And live a fruitful life. That's the question. You can't live a fruitful life under capitalism unless you or your family is already pretty well off, or you just so happen to be one of the lucky few who get a decent job that pays you enough to where you don't really have to clock in and clock out unreasonable hours 5 to 6 days a week, right? That's what I'm fundamentally because
Why?
go ahead.
Why do you think certain jobs pay people more?
Because those jobs are either dangerous jobs, or those jobs require a college degree, or those jobs require some sort of experience.
Okay.
Hey,
Take a breather.
Can I interject? Can I interject for a second? We've been going on for like nearly 3 hours. So if y'all could find some way to wrap up this discussion in the next like 30 minutes, that would be great.
Man.
Just Just letting you
Do
know,
you?
like the current time step is 2:49
That's
as we
brilliant.
started
I love it.
this.
I love that so much. Can I lay out my socialist utopia for you, please? Just
Sure.
as kind of a joke, but not. Yeah, I could see this happening in the far future.
Yeah, I want to
Um,
hear.
So I wrote a lot of pages of stuff. By my count, I have 3,000 words and 16 pages. Pure debate prep doc. I have a page about my like how I think socialism would work. It's a pro-socialism page, right? So socialism in America is most often seen through useful social programs, right? Like welfare, unemployment, Medicare, Medicaid, those type of things, as well as through institutions like community college, Medicare for all, police departments, fire departments, public schools, all these different things. This is kind of the way that Americans are familiar with socialism, right? In a perfect world, in a post-scarcity society, this is how I see socialism, okay? Maybe even communism, okay? The means of production are owned, operated, and managed by the state, okay? However, the state would not be like the state as we know it today. It would be closer to a cross between the post-scarcity world of Star Trek and the artificial intelligence network of Skynet from the Terminator series. I know that's a weird analogy, just hang with me. Humans would still work if they wanted to, because I pretty strongly believe that human beings garner a lot of their self-worth, at least men. The question is up for debate with women, but regardless, not the point. I believe that human beings garner some sort of self-worth from work, but the work would be whatever they wanted it to be, complete and total freedom of choice. In this world, currency would also be a thing of the past, as there would be no need to exchange your labor and your time for credits, right? People would do the work that they wanted to do. People would do the work that they wished to do, not because they had to do it to survive, but because they wanted to do it. If they wanted to spend all of their time or most of their time with their family or friends, going to church, participating in leisure activities, they absolutely could. The world would rely on the state, which is that artificial general superintelligence, to keep society functioning properly. Using algorithms that it wrote itself, it could perfectly predict what resources the society would require, how much of that resource, where it was needed, and when it was needed. Using something akin to like replicators from Star Trek, it would create it, and then using teleporters, it would transport it to wherever it needed to be. That would be my perfect socialist utopia. The only problem with that, as you might have noticed, is it doesn't exist. That's the only way that I could see socialism or communism working. That's it. Other than that, full-blown socialism as well, raw, full-blown socialism. Other than that, I don't know how it works. I have no idea. It doesn't compute in my head at all. Maybe I've been brainwashed by capitalism. Maybe. I personally don't think so. I think I'm very amenable to other systems if I can make them make sense. I just can't make it make sense other than that.
I'm glad you read that to me. That's not even what I was debating.
No, I know. Absolutely. I wasn't accusing you of that. I was just giving my pro-socialism viewpoint.
And I get that, but I think that putting it in the implication of it can only exist in a perfect world I think that's harmful, because obviously that's not realistic. But I mean, yeah, it's just that it's a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not real. So yeah, but I just yeah, I've said everything I need to say, really.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any questions for me that we might have left out? Because I've been attacking your worldview a lot, and I'm totally open to any questions. I feel like I've not asked any disingenuous, like super disingenuous questions. I think I've tried to take apart your ideas in the most reasonable way possible. But I'm willing to hear any questions that you have of me.
I want to ask you what the purpose of capitalism even is. What is the point? Why do we have
it? Well, okay, so the purpose of capitalism is probably to find the most efficient way to, and this is super off the cuff, I'm not reading anything, probably to find the most efficient way to deliver goods and services to people, right? So if you have market failures, if you have cronyism, right, these are things that are not really what capitalism is designed to do. Okay, so I'm sure if I went back to the definition of capitalism, that would sort of elucidate what the point of capitalism is. But yeah, the point of capitalism is to, in the most effective and efficient way possible, produce things and work by the law of supply and demand, meet the needs of the free market.
So you would agree that it's more about it's more about production and subsequently profit than it is about the people that create that product or the people that that create that product. Would you say that?
If we're talking on pure, like in a vacuum, maybe, but as it plays out, it just doesn't play out that way. The reason that we have benefits and bonuses, right, for employees that do better work than other employees or pay raises is because corporations, through greed, by the way, want to keep their good employees, and so they're willing to do what it takes to keep them.
Okay. And that sounds about right. I'm just wondering because like I can't see a situation where we have this capitalism that just seems to be like this great system that works and everybody should implement it while we still have a high rate of homeless people in this country.
Real quick, do you think our rate of homelessness is higher than places like Cuba or Venezuela or like really shitty societies?
Well, that in itself, Jonathan, is a fallacy. You can't take the worst case scenario and compare that to what we have now. That is a fallacy.
Well, I'm taking the worst case scenario and the best case scenario.
Yeah, that's not.
I know. Okay, so
United States and Cuba, like there are levels in between. It's not just one or the other.
So I want to reiterate: there's nothing that we have legitimately to compare it to. I think you said that verbatim earlier. There's not an example of a socialist or democratic socialist state that you'd be like, yes, this is what we need to go for, right?
Well, there's just really that's what makes it so hard to debate in favor of socialism because there's no real example. Of course,
why do you think there's not a real example?
We already went over this because anytime a country tries to do a socialist thing, right, it ends up becoming this whole thing where we have CIA-backed coups, and
CIA-backed coups that don't work.
Even if it was a failed coup, and I know we have to wrap it up. Even if it was a failed coup, that doesn't change the fact that the CIA did do a coup there. It doesn't matter if it failed or not.
100%. Okay, real quick, do you think countries fuck with the U.S. or do you think it's only the U.S. fucking with other countries?
I think that the U.S. fucks with other countries. I really do. Because the fact of the matter is, and as much as I hate to say it, the United States is a world superpower. The United States spends billions, maybe even trillions of dollars on its military. So it doesn't make any sense for a small country to attack the United States.
It doesn't have to be a small country. And by the way, it should be said, Cuba did try to fuck with the U.S. Cuba fucked with the U.S. with the power of Russia standing right behind it. So this is my question.
Behind it. By itself.
Do other countries fuck with the U.S.?
What other countries? Just anything other than Russia?
Russia, China, North Korea, any of them?
I mean, they don't because they don't want nuclear fallout. They don't want nuclear war.
You're saying China doesn't fuck with us?
I'm saying, well, no. If they wanted to fuck with us, they would do that.
Not like via straight war, but like spying on us, stealing our IP.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
Okay, perfect. Then this is my question, okay?
Of course they do.
Why is it that America can survive when other countries fuck with it, but other countries can't survive when we fuck with them? Why do you think that is?
Because America has a shit ton of allies, so it's not just America. And also other countries don't spend as much as America does on its military.
But this isn't purely military. The CIA doesn't get military budgets.
But I'm just saying, I'm just saying hypothetically, like if you spend most of your time and most of your money focusing on your military, focusing on your intelligence agencies, focusing on your investigation bureaus, of course you're going to be able to topple other countries that don't focus on that, but instead focus on social programs. Of course you will. So of course, when a country that has all this stuff that technically operates like an empire, they go on and they take all this stuff from countries that don't focus on war, don't focus on their military like that, of course they're going to topple the whole country very easily. Of course they are.
Why do you think the Bay of Pigs failed?
I don't know much about the Bay of Pigs. I really don't.
Do you know what it is basically?
I've heard about it, but I don't know. You'd have to refresh my memory on that.
Why do you? Okay, so the Bay of Pigs failed. That was a coup to topple Fidel Castro. The Venezuelan coup d'état attempt of 2002 failed. The coup of Operation Gideon back in 2020 that failed. Why, even though we're spending so much money on these agencies and these coups, they're failing? Why is that now your scapegoat to say, well, these countries only fail because of the CIA? And by the way, Russia failed completely separate from what America was doing to it. Russia collapsed in on itself.
Yeah, they did.
And I know you're not defending Russia. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, Russia collapsed on itself, but Russia also. Well, I don't understand how this relates to socialism. Russia was not a socialist economy. Yes, Stalin was
a communist. Well, it was a communist society, so it's a more extreme version of socialism.
Right, but I'm not advocating for that, so I don't understand.
No, I know. Okay. So if you build a building, right? Do you have to have a good foundation, or does the foundation not really matter?
You have to have a good foundation.
Okay, I completely agree.
But
So if you're building a society with socialist views, and then it becomes taller and it becomes a more extreme version of socialism, the foundation matters to that country.
Right, but that is insinuating. But the way, okay, yes, it becomes a more extreme version of socialism, which is communism. We already agreed on that. But communism is not the same thing as socialism. It's a more extreme version, but it's not fundamentally the same thing. Sure. There's a and either way, I'm not defending socialism. I'm defending democratic socialism.
Has there ever been a country in which democratic socialism has been tried, period, regardless of whether or not it's failed?
To my knowledge, no, but I'm sure that I can look one up. Let me get my laptop.
Okay, so to your knowledge, assuming that you're correct, which we could be wrong, and I'll bob and weave. I don't mind. Why do you think it's never worked? Is it because it hasn't been? Or I'm sorry, we just decided. To your knowledge, it hasn't been tried. Why do you think no country has ever tried it? Your version of socialism, of democratic socialism.
Why no one's ever tried it? If you asked me, honestly, why I believe no other countries have ever tried democratic socialism is because, and it's just going to sound outlandish, is because I don't believe that they want to be wiped out. I legitimately believe that, like, countries such as the United States, China, Russia, big countries, big name countries, the UK, I believe that they will literally wipe these countries out if they try to do that. And I know that's bordering on conspiracy theory, but I really fundamentally believe it. Because I can't see any situation why another country, even like a country like New Zealand or a country like Norway, I get that those have like mixed economies, but I don't see any other reason why countries would not try to do that. I don't believe that it's bad in practice. I believe that it takes some work, as does any system does, right? Capitalism didn't start out perfect. The United States itself didn't start out perfect. We had the Articles of Confederation, and that was terrible. And then we decided to exchange that for something else, something that was better. So it takes time. But because no one's ever had an opportunity to try it, we're never going to know if it even works.
You have any other questions for me? I can absolutely give you a minute to think if you want to look over notes or anything like that. Seth, do you have any? Oh, never mind. What's up? Seth, do you have any questions for me?
Me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my notes are a little unorganized as well. Mm-hmm. Okay. Brandon, any questions?
No, that's pretty much it. I have a headache.
I have a little bit of a headache as well. Plus, I'm working tonight, it's going to be really fun.
Oh God, your soul. What time are you working?
I work later.
Okay.
Yeah, like past dinner time. But I mean, it's going to be fine. I'm used to it.
Got to make that count.
I'm making more than minimum wage, bro. So I'm pretty happy.
As a manager, I'm sure you are.
Okay. Yeah, Seth. Again, I want to extend a very legitimate and sincere, genuine thank you, Brandon. I know it's difficult to, as you said a second ago, it might be difficult to defend a system that hasn't exactly been fleshed out by a country yet. So I appreciate you coming here and letting me put your feet to the fire. You and I's relationship has been going over a couple of years now. So I think it's been fun. If you want to do it again over a different subject or same subject, I would love to. I love having these conversations. They're really fun. I love, even though it's a lot of work, I love making debate docs, which, by the way, Brandon, I'm going to put out my debate doc as soon as the video is done. So you'll get to go through it if you want. I'm not saying that you have to, just up to you, whatever. I don't care. I think it's pretty funny. I think it's a fun read, but that's me and I made it, so I'm biased.
Though, where you're gonna place the recording?
It's probably gonna be on Facebook. Probably. Okay. Well, it's gonna be posted to YouTube, but it'll probably be on Facebook.
Yeah,
you should probably edit it down at least a little bit, or edit out some.
I probably won't.
Well, I'll send you the raw file, and you can do whatever you want with it.
That'll work for me.
Hey,
Brandon, do you have anything?
No, that's it. I just wanted to be able to watch it and see the comments and see people grill me. That's all.
Okay. Awesome. Seth,
right.
Thank you for moderating, for doing what you did, writing notes down, doing the recording. All of that is very appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You kill a crap?
Yeah. Peace. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now.